Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Naruto Secretly Trained Beyond Kakashi's Eyes Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. It had been another day of training for Uzumaki Naruto. Hey, training's what he calls it. When Kakashi finally showed up, with another one of those idiotic excuses, after that it had been another one of those teamwork exercises, and to round it all off another lecture about the importance of chakra control. And once again Kakashi had been only looking in his direction when he did. He was getting sick and tired of it. In Wave Country he had witnessed Sasuke's chakra control during that tree climbing exercise, so he knew his wasn't much better than his own. Still, the Uchiha got nothing but praise from their sensei. He passed Ikiraku ramen and ordered his miso ramen to go. After paying he took his cup to the Hokage monument. Sitting down in the lotus position with the cup in the middle of his lap he started meditating for a couple of minutes. Slowly he reached a certain peace of mind. He enjoyed the silence in his head for a couple of minutes, breathing in the steam of his ramen. Then he started analyzing his problem, picking it apart piece by piece. He was tired of the lectures on chakra control and never hearing Kakashi complain about anyone else. He was tired being told to look up at Sasuke and to try and be more like that stiff-headed and spoiled brat of an Uchiha. The only solution to the problem he saw was to get better than him. Not just a little better, a lot. He would have to beat him with a mile before anyone would recognize him for it. But who could teach him? Not Kakashi for sure. He didn't want him to know about this training. Maybe Iruka would know a thing or two. He remembered his former teacher to have given a few lessons about it. Unfortunately he had dozed off during those hours. I'll make sure not to do that this time. With a renewed spirit he opened his eyes and started eating his barely warm ramen. Iruka had just finished teaching class when Naruto ran into him at the entrance of the Ninja Academy. He greeted his former student with a smile. Anyo-sa, Iruka-sensei, I need a favor. Hello Naruto, what can I do for you? You remember those lessons about chakra control? Hi, what about it? Well I decided to start taking that seriously but, the blonde genin scratched the back of his head. I forgot the technique you taught us to practice it. The elder Chunin laughed a little as Naruto finished his sentence. He, guess I should have woke you before I started about an actual technique to practice it. It's alright, I'll show you. Iruka jumped up and picked a leaf of the nearest tree and placed it on his forehead. The trick is to release just enough chakra from your forehead to make the leaf float above it. Not enough and it won't move or fall back on your head, too much and it will shoot of your head and you won't be able to control it. As Iruka finished his explanation he concentrated and made the leaf float a few inches above his head. Now you try it. He picked the leaf out of the air and handed it to Naruto. Naruto pushed his head protector a little more up his head and placed the leaf on his forehead. He concentrated his chakra to his forehead and when he released it the leaf shot up like a rocket. After about a yard the wind picked it up. Iruka snatched it and handed it back to Naruto. Just as I thought. You obviously use way too much chakra. That's okay, just keep practicing. I'm sorry, but I've got some tests to correct. Good luck on the training Naruto. He weighed up. The Chunin looked back at Naruto. What is it? How long does it normally take to master this technique? Oh, it shouldn't take you longer than a few days, a week tops as it's a basic technique. Okay, thanks Iruka-sensei. Naruto had been training his chakra control for 3 days now. Mostly in his apartment as there wasn't any wind there and he could quickly grab the leaf as it flew out of his control. He had improved greatly and could finally hover the leaf above his head, but he still found himself lacking a great deal of control. The leaf now hovered about 15 inches from his head, which was fine inside his room, but outside the wind would still get a hold of it. Another 2 days later, he had finally mastered the technique and he found his chakra control had clearly improved. His other techniques seemed to have become less taxing and he could make more shadow clones with the same amount of chakra. An idea popped in his head as he thought about this. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. A clone appeared, holding his own leaf in his hands. Both Narutos pulled their head back and placed the leaf on their foreheads. The leaves once again flew high above their heads, but he managed to keep them steady nonetheless. Wow, this is more difficult than I imagined. But it's a good training nonetheless. A few hours later, Naruto managed to regain some more control. Exhausted, but satisfied, he fell down on the bed and decided to use this exercise on a daily basis. 4 days later, 7 more clones had joined in on his little exercise. He was feeling more confident in his newfound control. It had already paid itself off. There was nothing like an army of clones to help out harvesting crops or babysit a small bunch of kids. And although the Junin hadn't said anything, he was sure Kakashi had noticed something. He found it time to move on. He had already tried combining the exercise with the tree climbing, but stopped trying since he kept hitting his head on the ground. He needed something new. Something bigger. Iruka was out of town this week as he had gotten a mission to Hidden Gra village. He decided to head for the town library. He never imagined the library to be so huge. Racks as high as the ceiling were stacked with scrolls. The problem wasn't finding an interesting jutsu to learn, there must have been thousands to choose from. The problem was that he didn't know which one would serve his purpose. He had tried talking to the cleric, only to got turned the cold shoulder. What the hell is it with these people that they hate me so much? I bet they wouldn't act like this to their precious Ucha. An idea struck his mind. He looked for a quiet place near the entrance and created a clone. The clone immediately performed a henge, and before Naruto now stood the Uchiha he had grown to despise so much. Oi Dobi. You got the scroll. Don't call me that, you bastard. So you got the scroll. Gomen. Couldn't find it. The clone gave a look of annoyance and walked towards the cleric who had noticed the conversation of the two. Naruto soon followed. As the clone Sasuke reached the cleric, he asked him for a technique that would improve their chakra control. I've got just the technique for you, Uchiha-san. However, it might be a bit too much for your teammate here. I asked you for your advice in a technique, not to insult my teammate. Of course, Gomen sir. You might find the water walking jutsu appropriate. You can find it in the water department, first rack on your right, third shelf. Arigato. Naruto and his clone walked over to the scroll and studied it for a few minutes. This should be easy, plus the worst thing that could happen is to get some wet clothes. After placing the scroll back and leaving the library, Naruto dispelled his clone and headed for the river. Hehehe Uchiha, you've finally proved some use. Naruto had followed the river for a good end until he finally found a spot where the water was calmer and shallow enough to his liking. He stood there silently for a moment, studying the gentle flow of the liquid surface. Then he calmly rolled up his pants until he had uncovered his knees. His control might have improved over the last week, but he wasn't foolish enough to think he would succeed on the first try. It had taken him a week to gain enough control to walk up a tree, and this wasn't simply sticking to a surface, this was creating a stable surface to walk on. Well, at least this time, the chance of hitting my head to the ground will be minimal. With that thought, he began channeling his chakra to his feet. He hovered 1 foot over the water and immediately violent wrinkles started disturbing the calm surface. Wow, that can't be good. Must be overdoing it again. He lessened the amount of chakra and instantly the water stopped its wild flow. Putting his foot down on it, he broke the still surface and felt his foot hitting the riverbed. This might be trickier than I thought. Several hours had gone by and Naruto was steadily finding his way towards the surface of the water. Since the water was shallow enough to stand in, he figured he could work his way up so he wouldn't have to get in and out of the water all the time. He was meditating, forgetting about the outside world, trying to find peace with himself, letting go of all conflict, feeling the water at his legs, flowing through his toes, he tried to become one with it. And slowly he managed to slightly control his altitude. Time does not matter, only with patience will I achieve my goal. Repeating this thought for an indeterminable time, he finally reached the surface. The water now carried him like the earth had before. Slowly he opened one eye, as if when he would look he would ruin the magic. When he saw his feet were no longer underwater, he couldn't but jump and shout over his victory. Upon landing, he immediately fell through the water and fell ungracefully on his. His face still held a grin to them. Tough, if he could do it once, he could do it again, right? 15 minutes later he had reached the flowing surface once again. This time deciding to hold himself still for a couple of minutes until he had calibrated his chakra some more. Then he slowly tried lifting his foot, seeing if he had to readjust his chakra flow if he did. Luckily he didn't have to. Grateful and relieved, he started walking around slowly. It was not long before he felt confident in his newfound skill and started playing around with it. He had spent about 15 minutes skating across the river. When his stomach began to growl, he decided to head for Ichiraku. He was tempted to run to the center of the village across the water, but decided not since he wanted to keep his extra training secret. As he reached the village, he could not help but notice the cold stares. You always have hated me, you have always detested me, but now at least I know why you do. I know you all have suffered more than I can image. That what I felt when I thought Sasuke had died on the bridge could not come close to what some of you have had to endure. But why can't you understand that I am not him? The thoughts went through his head as he ran further down the village. He felt the cold stares following him everywhere he turned, their icy gazes peering into his back, hate burning in their eyes. He had learned to cope with them, but he still wished that for just once he could walk around without all the hate pointed towards him. He rounded the last corner for the Ichiraku stand. Immediately he was pushed away by a horde of crazy fangirls, screaming the name of his rival. His muscles tensed when he heard the name. He turned his head towards the goal of the wild horde just in time to see his teammate run off. You Uchiha, you spoiled bloodline brat. Soon I will surpass you, and when that day comes we'll see how much they love their dear Uchiha. He clenched his fist hard enough for his muscles to shake his arm and let out a growl. He tried shaking it off as he continued to one of the few places in the village where his company was welcomed. Oi Naruto, where were you, man? I was expecting you 3 hours ago. Sorry Ikira-san, I was training by the river. Guess I got a little carried away. He, when don't you get carried away? Anyway, what can I get ya? Well, I do feel like chicken tonight. One chicken ramen coming right up. The old man smiled and turned to the pot of boiling water. Hey Ichi, can I ask you something odd? Haven't heard much else from you, kid. What's on your mind? Well, it's kinda hard to find the right words. The blonde paused for a long time. Kid, why don't you just mindlessly blurt it out like you seem to do everything else? Hey, Ikira just grinned at the boy and gave him a wink. He put the bowl of ramen on the counter and leaned a little closer. Look, Naruto, you've been a customer longer than I can remember, and I doubt that your question would stop me from welcoming you here. So if you've got something on your mind, just speak up and I'll see what I can do for you. The blonde smiled when he heard those words. He stared into his ramen bowl for a few seconds, pondering over his old friend's words. Quote. Promise? Naruto looked Ikira deeply in his eyes and saw nothing but honesty when the man answered, on the face of the fourth, holding his hand to his chest and pointing towards the Hokage monument. The young genin smiled again, then he took in a deep breath of air to build up his courage. Do you know why the people of the village hate me? Ikira sighed and looked down. His face showed shame and disappointment. Hi, but unless you want my head chopped off and put on a pike, I can't tell you why. Naruto, however, didn't look sad or disappointed. He knew why. ever since he graduated from the academy. He remembered that day like it was yesterday, as it was one of the happiest of his life. Finally, he had figured out where all that hate came from, and those whiskers. It also had been the first time that someone had stood up and vouched for him. Iruka had saved his life in more ways than one. Thanks, he said, then turning his head back to his ramen, indicating he didn't want to discuss it any further. After finishing his meal, he had returned to his house as it was getting late. He had been training, so he wanted to get some rest. On the way, he almost ran into his raven-haired teammate. But as the two's eyes met, however, a multitude of girls' screams filled the air. Naruto witnessed his rival's appearance suddenly exchanged for a log of wood right before being jumped by 6 girls. As he looked at the faces of the adults who were nearby the event, he saw nothing but smiles on their faces. Smiles that rapidly turned to sour disgust as they saw him standing there. Angry, he took to the rooftops to escape their stares. No matter what I do or how good I become, they'll never recognize me for what I am. I'll be never given the instant respect that they grant their precious Uchiha. He spat out the last 2 words. When he arrived at his apartment, he was too angry and pumped up from jumping houses and thinking about his teammate. Normally he would calm his temper by meditating on the ceiling. Today, however, he just didn't feel like it. So he summoned up a cage bunshin and made it perform a henge, making it look like Sasuke. You think you're so big. Everybody thinks you're so great. And no matter what I do, that view will probably never change. You'll always be their Uchiha prodigy, and I'll never be anything but a demon in their eyes. He just stared at the clone, then in an instant Naruto had plunged his fist in the clone's face. When the smoke cleared, however, it was not the orange-clad, golden-haired genin who stood there. It was his darker, onyx-eyed teammate that was standing in his room. So be it. They like their Uchiha so much, I'll give them all the Uchiha they want. Naruto had awoken early that day. There would be a lot to do and little time to do it. After finishing his breakfast, he headed for the library and checked out a book on fire jutsus. He also took a book about the most prominent clans in Konoha. After that, he headed towards the Uchiha mansion and spied on his teammate for a few hours. He had changed his appearance to one of the girls that jumped him the other day and hid somewhere out of sight. Figuring Sasuke would discard him as more of an annoyance than a threat, should he spot him. Naruto was taking notes on the Uchiha's movements, analyzing his teammate as he was practicing against the dummies in the courtyard. After an hour, he began seeing through the motions and started to see some logic behind his movements. But then it seemed that the show was over as Sasuke went back indoors. He looked at his watch and noticed he had to leave as training would start soon anyway, he remarked to himself, remembering his sensei's habit of unpunctuality. The man was even late when they received missions, for God's sake. Naruto cursed him for it then more than usual, as they had to make up for it by working harder and or longer as the result of the hours of wasted time. Ah well, at least nobody will ever trick me into not eating breakfast again. He came out of his hiding place and started reading up on some of the fire jutsus. As he flipped through the pages, he noticed that the techniques depended little on precise chakra control. He cursed himself that he had never started learning them sooner. They seemed rather basic, and a lot of them weren't nearly as complicated as he had thought them to be. Before arriving at the bridge, he put the book back in his backpack. Sakura and Sasuke had already arrived at the bridge and were standing on their usual positions. For Sakura, that position being in a 5-yard radius near Sasuke, desperately trying to make some way of conversation. Naruto casually greeted them and took a seat on the railing. He plugged in his left earphone and put on some music. Over the last few weeks, Naruto had grown extremely quiet during these waiting periods compared to his usual loud self. Both his teammates found themselves happy with this change of behavior. Especially Sakura was pleased with this change of events, as she was tired of being asked out by the loud blonde. Today, however, she was not spared of questions. Naruto had been observing Sakura's futile attempts of asking Sasuke out and then suddenly broke his silence. Sakura, can I ask you something? The pink-haired Kunoichi was a little surprised by the calmness of his words. Nani? Naruto, why do you even keep trying? You know he's never gonna go out with you. Looking at the way he runs away from girls, I wouldn't be surprised if he would rather date me. This earned him a death glare from both his teammates. Didn't talk like that about Sasuke. I wasn't even finished yet. Naruto had raised his voice to break of Sakura. Why do you even like him? Can you tell me that? Your entire life he hasn't said a single friendly word to you. Or to anybody as far as I can remember. Now you may answer. Just shut up, Naruto. You don't know anything. Well, then that's probably why I was asking. However, you don't seem to have an answer either. Sakura fumed anger as she was dumbstruck to answer. Naruto just stared in her eyes, waiting for a reply that would never come. Sakura simply turned her back towards her teammate and walked back towards the object of her affection. Naruto now plugged his other earphone as his head, grinned and took up a lotus position against the bridge railing. They all waited in silence for their sensei. Training had proven to be somewhat more of a challenge as Naruto had tried to keep observing Sasuke. Even harder was trying to follow him home. Every street corner he crossed he had used another henge. The last few streets Sasuke had started to turn his head every now and then. So he decided that he had seen enough for the day being. He had his own personal training left to do anyway and he could use all the time he had. He headed for the river and started jogging over its surface, looking for a quiet spot to practice the new jutsus he'd acquired. After about 20 minutes he had found a suitable spot, about a mile behind the training areas. There was a spot where the river was fairly wide with a rock formation that would keep him from view. He took the book from his bag and continued reading where he left off. He started to like that librarian more and more. He wouldn't give Naruto the time of day, but for Sasuke. When he went in this morning he was posing as him with a quick henge and asked if he could provide him with a good book on fire jutsus for his teammate, if possible something he could use as well. The book he received must have reflected the librarian's opinion on both him and his teammate. It started for complete beginners and ended with some Chunin level techniques. He didn't know whether to feel insulted or pleased, since it was exactly what he needed. The book was simple and to the point. The introduction was only a page long and thereafter immediately followed by a simple technique. Technique number 1. Breath of Flame. Description. A simple technique used to introduce students to the principles of fire jutsus. With this technique a small flame is produced from the mouth, varying between 10 and 30 inches. Rule number 1. First time students please note to turn your back towards the book while practicing the techniques. Then follow the further instructions of molding chakra, making seals and releasing the molded chakra. It took Naruto only a few minutes to successfully execute the technique. He played with it for a couple of minutes to test his level of control. When he was satisfied he moved on to the next one, which handled the spitting of very small fireballs. He kept repeating this process for about 2 hours, after successfully having learned 6 minor techniques. Skipping a few pages ahead, he noticed that Sasuke's favored Grand Fireball and Fire Flower techniques were only a few pages further. They would have to wait though. He was hungry and on a tight schedule. He performed what had become his trademark seal. 3 shadow clones appeared next to him. Backup team reporting for duty, sir. He saluted to his crew and stood for them. Clone NR1, your job is to search the forest for fruit, vegetables or any other source of food. Sir. Yes, sir. Clone NR2, step forward. Your mission will be to supply us with firewood, afterwards you will assist Clone NR1 in his job. Aye, sir. Clone NR3, you and me are going fishing. You will search the river upstream, while I will be looking downstream. Yes, sir. Alright. Report back here in 15 minutes. Upon return Naruto brought 3 fish with him. Being able to walk on water definitely had advantages. His upstream colleague returned moments later with a single fish. Clone number 1 had done a fine job. Dry wood and leaves were already piled up, ready to be sparked on fire. He returned with his partner, both holding their hands full with berries. They placed their findings on the towel Naruto always carried in his bag and disappeared, while the last clone gutted the fish and spiked them on a stick. Naruto himself lit the fire with one of his new techniques. Hinata had spent the rest of her day on her studies on medical plants and wandered in the forest behind the training areas in search of herbs. She was just on her way home to get a bite to eat until she recognized the smell of roasting fish in the air. The smell was strong, indicating someone must be cooking not far from here. For some reason her intuition told her to check out the source. After a few minutes she came upon a rock formation. Some smoke was coming up from behind it. Silently she moved closer towards the rocks. When she took a peek behind she let out a small gasp and whispered a quiet, "Naruto-kun," as she recognized her crush sitting by the fire. A slight smile came across her face as she continued to watch him. He was sitting in the lotus position some distance from the fire, upwind so the smell of fish wouldn't be all over him. His face was pointed upwards. Suddenly he seemed to grab something above his head and looked at the fish. He was definitely holding something in his hand since he had raised it and was looking as if inspecting something. Hinata leaned closer to the rock surface to get a better look on the object he was holding. She must have brushed against a loose rock or something because the next thing she heard was the sound of rock falling on rock. Naruto looked up at the sudden noise. Shit! Someone's spying on me. Goddammit! Who, and how much have they seen? I have to find out. He stood up and moved as fast and silent he could towards the point of the sound's origin, hoping the intruder hadn't already fled or didn't hear him coming. Instead of running around the rock to see behind the corner he jumped on top of it and simply looked down at the voyeur. Hinata. Hinata nearly fell back from surprise as she heard him. She should have run, she still wanted to, but she couldn't. Would he think of her then? What should she do? What should she say? Hello Naruto-kun. Ai Naruto-kun. That's a first. He knew Hinata from the academy. He had always found her a little weird, but something told him she was a nice person. You hungry? Nani. Why would he ask me if I'm hungry? He must know I was watching him, why would? Are you hungry? I'm making dinner, but I'm not a real fish lover. Besides, we're both genin, we should get to know each other. Is this really happening? Naruto-kun asking me to have dinner with him. Please don't let this be a dream. I'll like that, Naruto-kun. Okay then, hurry up, I think my fish are burning. They weren't. Phew, they're okay. For a minute they got me worried there. He picked up 2 of them and placed them a little further from the fire, to prevent them from burning and presented the other 2 to his unexpected guest. Hinata took the smaller one and gave out a slight, arigato. Both sat down near the fire and started eating. So Hinata, what were you doing out here? I was gathering medical herbs in the forest. Hee, you seem to have wandered off quite a bit. There's not much growing here. He let his eyes wander over the open place covered by nothing but stones that ran right into the river. At one time the river must have reached to this height. Hinata blushed and bowed down her face, looking down at the ground. Anyo. I was on my way home until I smelled roasted fish. Naruto scratched the back of his head in a gesture of embarrassment. Yeah well, I guess that was a dead giveaway, he said laughing the words. A gentle smile graced Hinata's face. Were you training here, Naruto-kun? Kinda, but it's okay. I enjoy the company. Arigato. How's your fish? It's good. Glad you like it. Both continued talking for several hours. It was rare that Naruto had someone to talk to, so when he did he tried making the conversation last as long as he could. Say Hinata, do you like ramen? I guess so, yes. Great. We could have dinner sometime at Ichiraku's. If you don't mind, of course. I don't mind. I would really like that. Alright, it's a deal. Tomorrow at 7, okay with you? Hi. It had started getting dark and the fire had long gone out. It's getting late now though. What say I walk you home? Okay, Naruto-kun. Both packed up their bags and together they walked through the forest leading to the training areas. When they reached the city streets, night had already covered Konoha in its blanket of stars and darkness. Hinata was happy that her face was concealed by shadows. The only light falling on them was that of the moon and the lights inside the houses, penetrating through the curtains. She had been blushing for quite some time now, as the side-by-side walk to her home was like a fantasy of hers. Her crush was walking her home, making sure she would be safe from harm. She was disappointed as they arrived at her home. It was the end of a beautiful dream. This is where I live. Arigato for walking me home, Naruto-kun. You're welcome. So I'll see you tomorrow at 7, okay? Hi. Okay. Good night, Hinata. Good night, Naruto-kun. When he arrived at home, Naruto mused over the day's happenings. He felt good tonight, having accomplished and learned a great deal and getting to know Hinata better. He hated being alone and always welcomed a new friend in his life. Too bad he hadn't done any chakra training today. Well, he had done the leaf forehead thingy, but then he met Hinata. He remembered the occurrence and noticed there was something else. Something he was thinking at that time. Yeah, that was it. He couldn't watch the fish roasting when floating the leaf above his forehead. Sue, let's try if I can do it at other places. I've got a few more hours to spend before hitting the sack. He picked up a leaf from the stack he kept around the house and placed it on the palm of his hand. When he concentrated his chakra, the leaf immediately shot up to the ceiling. Okay. Lesson 1. Hands clearly emit more chakra than the forehead. This time he gradually increased his chakra until the leaf gently started to float. After a few minutes he had gotten used to the change in amount of chakra he had to use, so he placed the leaf on his other hand. He found that his chakra control in his left hand was a little less stable, but figured it might be because he was right-handed. About 15 minutes later he was satisfied with his amount of control. He took a look at his watch, placing the leaf back in his right hand, making it float above his hand again. Damn it, if it only takes half an hour to do this, it can't be that impressive. I might be as good as Sasuke now, but remembering Wave Country, I'm probably nothing compared to Sakura. That might not be the point of the whole thing, but I want to humiliate the bastard. It's not good enough to just be better, I need to be overwhelming. Thinking these words, the leaf had started to twist around its axis faster and faster. He noticed, and as he started thinking over it, the leaf almost instantly left his hand, twirling wildly. What the hell was that? I didn't know it could do that. Somehow, I must have put more chakra in the technique, without losing control or changing height. So, the extra chakra must have started the rotation. Okay. Well, anyway, if I did it by accident, I have to be able to do it again, right? More than an hour had gone by before he finally started to comprehend the workings of the technique. Jesus, this is hard. I don't even know why I'm doing this and if it even would pay off, but if it's this hard, it's gotta be good. Slowly but surely he found the way to make the leaf spin in his hands again. Attempts to make the leaf spin faster proved futile, as it would simply spin out of his hand. RGH. Do I have to pin you down or what? He cursed at the leaf that was now tumbling down the air again. Quote. Actually, yeah, let's try that, see how you like that, you little piece of. He continued, expressing his unsatisfied demands of the leaf's performance. Hurriedly he walked over to his desk, picked up the metal paperweight and placed it upon the leaf he held in his hand. Now let's see you fly, huh? He lifted up both objects with his chakra. He needed to put in a whole lot more, cause of the added weight, but knowing Naruto, that wasn't much of a problem. Once he gained enough control to keep the paperweight at a steady height, he started the rotation. Slowly, but surely the paperweight's movement started to increase. When it came to the point where the leaf would get out of control because of wind friction, it stayed steadily rotating in his hand. Yeah, you ain't so hot now, are ya? He continued spinning the weight above his hand, furiously trying to keep increasing the speed of rotation. But after reaching a certain speed, the weight seemed to spin out of control and went flying through the room. It crashed into the wall, making a dent in the stone as well as the metal surface of the weight. Quote exclamation mark. I thought I had something there. Ah well, back to the drawing board I guess. Where's the leaf? He looked around for a few seconds. He didn't see it fall anywhere or fly in his usual manner. Where did the damn thing go? Ah well, better pick up the paperweight, I'll probably just hurt my foot against it in the morning otherwise. When his fingers reached the bottom though, he quickly pulled back. Sheet. Hot 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 hot. He ran for the faucet and turned on the cold water. Man, what the hell made that thing so hot? It was levitating 3 inches above my hand, it should be room temperature. He went back to the weight, picking it up with a wet towel. Inspecting the underneath only made things more strange. Again, there was no trace to the whereabouts of the missing leaf, but the underneath of the weight looked as if it had been polished on a piece of sandpaper. A spiraling pattern was visible on the place he concentrated his chakra. What the hell? Tonight's only getting stranger and stranger. Maybe I should call it a night before things get out of hand. It's late anyways and I've got training tomorrow. I'll figure out what's caused this then. He put the paperweight on the kitchen sink to let it cool off and placed a kunai on his papers to keep them from drifting around, then he hit the sack. At 7 Naruto got out of bed, fixed himself a quick breakfast and headed off to Sasuke's house again. He had brought a notebook with him this time. Once more he found his teammate training in the Uchiha courtyard, while Naruto hid himself somewhere out of sight in the form of one of the raven-haired boy's fangirls. His disgust for his teammate only grew as he observed his actions, taking notes and making sketches of his movements. What's so special about you, Uchiha? It's not enough that you were left a mansion fit for a clan, a bloodline technique that allows you to use others' jutsus as if they are yours and the love and respect of the entire village, but you have to take them all for granted. More scribbling followed as the onyx-eyed boy launched a combination of kicks, punches and elbows against the training dummies. How do you come up with those techniques? There's no one to train you. I don't think there's even anyone in the village who uses your style. So where do you get those fancy moves? Once again Sasuke left the courtyard. This was Naruto's signal to head for his team's meeting point. He arrived last at the bridge, not counting their sensei of course. As usual Sakura was trying to chat up Sasuke, who was just staring off into nothingness. Naruto just took a seat on the railing again and plugged in his earphone. He was nodding his head slowly to the beats of the music, but never taking his eyes off his teammates. The waiting was mind-numbing. After about 45 minutes he suddenly called out Sakura. The pink-haired genin looked a little agitated when she turned her head. Hey, looks like she remembers the little talk we had yesterday. Good. This could be worthwhile. Yes, Naruto, she sighed. You got an answer yet? The blonde asked, removing his headphones. Are you there again with your stupid questions? Look Naruto, I don't know what you're trying to do, but you're starting to piss me off. So if this is some plan of you to get me on a date, just give it up, cause it will never happen. Naruto didn't even blink. Yesterday, he was just being curious and rational. It had been a simple question. He hadn't expected an answer and had turned out to be right about it. Today, he just liked being in. He slowly stood up and walked towards Sakura, holding his hands behind his back. When he stood in front of her, he slowly leaned forwards inches from her face. Then he softly spoke. Do you think I look like I care? He turned his back to her and walked back to his spot. Sakura on the other hand launched a fist towards the back of her teammate's head. Naruto had expected it however and made a circular motion. He caught her arm and held it in a tight grip. His hand fitted easily around her slender arm. Sakura was surprised by the blonde's sudden movements. His next words surprised her even more. If you need to use violence to prove a point, you have already lost the argument. With that, he released her arm and moved on like nothing had ever happened. What the hell is happening to Naruto? First he turns almost so quiet and now he's turning philosophical on me. I almost believe he's genially not interested in going out with me anymore. Something's going on and I'll find out what. Thinking about this, Sakura positioned herself once again next to Sasuke. This time, she remained silent for a longer time. However, something's definitely up with the Dobi. He's being way too quiet for quite some time now and it's been days since he did or said anything stupid. Whatever, he's none of my concern, I've got bigger fish to fry. 2 hours later, Kakashi finally arrived. Konnichiwa. Sorry I'm late, but I noticed I was wearing 2 different socks and when I came home I noticed all my clothes were in the laundry. Liar. Sakura shouted out of force of habit. Normally Naruto would always back her up. These last few days, however, she had been scolding Kakashi on her own. As always, he ignored her and went on with explaining today's training. Today we'll be making a visit to training area number 58. You've probably heard of it, it's the one with the mechanized dummies. Your objective will be to obtain a wooden box positioned on the main hill. It's heavily guarded, weighs about 60 pounds and is not to be damaged in any way. So Sasuke, watch out with those fire jutsus, and Naruto, just don't drop it. You've got till 5 to obtain the box by any means and deliver it to the following address. With that, the silver-haired Junin disappeared in a puff of smoke. When it cleared, a piece of paper with the address on it was left. Naruto picked it up and stuffed the paper in his pocket. After which he took off in the direction of the designated area. Sasuke and Sakura quickly picked up his pace. It wasn't long before the raven-haired boy took his place in front of Naruto as they jumped from rooftop to rooftop through the village. Eyeing why bastard. 4 minutes later they arrived at the area entrance. Sasuke stopped and started summing up the situation. Okay. What I know of the area is that it spans about an 8-mile diameter, including a small forested area, and a small creek runs down from the central hill. This area here provides little to no cover, and far as I know there are about 80 or so animated dummies set up on strategical points. This is probably a simple go-get training that should test our offensive capabilities. I suggest we make our way to the creek and follow it to the main hill. I'll take point. Naruto, you guard the back. Sakura, you'll be support. Negative. Excuse me, Sasuke asked, amused as if disagreeing with him on matters of shinobi was the dumbest things to do. Naruto had a serious look on his face and his eyes never seemed to let go of Sasuke's. I said no, I've got better things to do with my time. We do this thing, today's training is over. So I'm saying we do this as fast as possible. We go straight for the main hill, smashing anything we come across, get the damn crate, deliver it and make some real use of the rest of the day. And I'm taking point. And why on earth should we listen to a dobi like you? Ridicule poured out of Sasuke's dark onyx eyes. Because if this is a test of our offensive skills, like you say it is, let's be offensive. That is, unless you're afraid of a little combat. Or do you think you won't be able to keep up with me? A foxy grin appeared on the blonde's face. Don't make me hurt you, Dobi. Sasuke tightened his fists. Feeling threatened, Uchiha, scared of a challenge. If that's what it takes to shut you up, bring it. Fine. You follow the fence 100 yards one way, I'll do the same the other way. First one to the crate wins. And you know, I'm feeling pretty generous today, so you can even take Sakura with you. I don't need her. She'll only slow me down. Ouch. Now that's a little bit harsh. She's standing right there, you know. Besides, I never said you had to. Whatever, you're on, Dobi. The dark-haired boy walked casually to the entrance, followed by Naruto. Oh Sasuke, after you lose, I'll be happy to give you some basic combat lessons. I'll make you eat those words next time we're sparring, Doby. Whatever, let's just get started already. Both boys darted off in a wild blur. After passing the said 100 yards, both disappeared from view in the canopy. Sakura had been standing there dumbfounded as the argument had found place. She had wanted to speak up to stand by Sasuke's case, but had been cut short by both boys every time. When Sasuke had finally said something about her, she felt the words as if they had been a stab to the heart. I would only slow you down. She sobbed the words quietly to herself. Now this sure is interesting. But it verifies my suspicions. Anyway, I ought to keep an eye on those two. Should do something about her as well though. In another puff of smoke, Kakashi appeared in front of the pink-haired genin, startling her and making her lose balance. Ungracefully, Sakura fell on her bottom, looking up to the tall silver-haired Junin. "Ey Sakura, why aren't you training with your teammates?" he said. Every word was an effort to her throat. He said, I would only slow him down. Sasu. He's right. The words were cold, but that shouldn't stop you from training. As a matter of fact, it should encourage you. The Junin's face turned into one of understanding and sympathy. He knelt down to her level. Sakura, let's face it, your taijutsu is the weakest of the team and your stamina and chakra levels are barely acceptable for a genin. You try to make up for it by this perfect chakra control of yours, but you have been seriously neglecting your stamina, bringing you at this situation. Kakashi offered his hand to the young girl. When she reached for it, he helped her on her feet again. So we'll have to work on that. Your new training for the rest of the day will be to run 10 laps around this area. After the first round, you'll be encountering some dummies every few kilometers. And I suggest you start doing this on a daily basis. The Junin played his hand through the young genin's hair. Now get going, girl, or you'll never be able to keep up with your teammates. With that, he disappeared once more that day. Once the smoke cleared, Sakura whispered a slight, "Thank you, Kakashi-sensei," and entered the training area. Sasuke encountered his first opponents less than 2 minutes after he had vanished into the trees. 5 dummies jumped in view, seemingly coming from nowhere. Never slowing his pace, he ran towards them and took out the one on the right by faking a straightforward jumping kick and making a roundhouse at the last second. The dummy's head got crushed on impact with his left foot. Immediately afterwards, he jumped high up and threw 3 shuriken at 3 other dummies. They seemed to have no effect on the wooden dolls as they just stayed stuck in their body parts. Seeing that the dummies kept moving, he started forming seals in midair. When his feet found the branch of a nearby tree, he had completed them and threw a grand fireball towards them. 3 more dummies found their demise. One of the survivors saw the opportunity to launch an attack from a lower branch and came jumping towards Sasuke, who easily dodged the oncoming dummies. When he was midair, he got attacked by the other dummy and had to block an incoming wooden foot. He managed to grab the dummy's leg and slam his opponent against a tree. His last opponent met its end when Sasuke countered his punch and broke his neck. Hey, that only slowed me down for about 17 seconds. But that fireball takes too much chakra if I want to keep up this pace. If I pull one every odd, or every third time, I should be able to still make good time though. That Doby doesn't stand a chance. I see Sasuke is handling himself perfectly, as I expected. At this pace, he could reach the package in about half an hour. He's got a pretty good chance at breaking the course record for his age, not including speed specialists like that Rock Lee kid, off course. Naruto shouldn't be too far behind. It's only been 2.5 minutes, better go check up on him. Kakashi said of to a point where Naruto should pass any second on his arrival. When more than 30 seconds passed, he decided to head back to check if the blonde was he found though were the broken parts of the 5 dummies. A quick glance was enough to see that the dummies were broken by normal hand and footwork. No ninjutsu seemed to have been used, as there were no traces of abnormal damage to the dummies or the surrounding area. He must be using Cage Bunshin, but if he's this far already, he must be using a lot of them. My guess is he makes the Bunshins fight the dummies and continues running to his goal. Judging by the distance between his footsteps, he's keeping up a fast pace too. Good thinking, Naruto, you'll make record time that way, just one problem. Since your chakra control isn't all that, you're probably using way too much and the high pace will drain your stamina. You'll be lucky if you reach the goal at all, were the thoughts going through Kakashi's head as he followed the trail Naruto was leaving behind. It wasn't long before the Junin had caught up with his student. The kid was keeping up the pace all right, he was easily topping Sasuke's. Now let's see how exactly you handle combat. Moments later, the next batch of dummies was activated and attacked Naruto from the flank. Naruto simply jumped out of the way of the oncoming dummies and created exactly one clone for each dummy, never even slowing down for a second. The clones made short work of the opponents. When one dummy was defeated, the victorious clone would help out another, ganging up on the remaining dummies. The whole fight lasted less than 10 seconds. All 6 clones had survived the ordeal, but they were in bad shape, sweating profoundly and trying to catch their breath. Clones are created with a fixed amount of chakra. This amount determines their stamina and the amount of chakra they can use. They can't regain any stamina by resting, and their lifespan is determined by the amount of stamina they have at creation and the amount they use in fights or other activities. Now, your chakra gets split up evenly among you and your clones, plus he needs a steady amount of it to keep up this high pace. That and the constant replenishing and distributing of his supply should wear him out significantly. Either Naruto got lucky when he made these clones, or he had a pretty good idea of the amount of clones and chakra he would need to win this fight. But that would require a good deal of control. Could he really have improved so much in such short time? That would be amusing, interesting and doubtful. It's not like his stamina has grown so much lately either. I just hope he's not getting it from somewhere else. His signature seems clean though. The Junin made a frown at these thoughts. There was definitely something going on with Naruto. He had become so quiet lately, more reserved, more mature. He was almost reminding him of Sasuke. But why would he do that? As far as I can tell, he never liked his teammate. Why would he start following his example? The two of you have been like day and night. One open and enthusiastic, one calm and reserved, one cheery, one grim, one bright, one dark, one loved and admired, one No, Naruto, I'm not sure what you're doing, but I think you're making a big mistake. For 20 minutes Naruto continued his wild dash before finally coming to a stop at the top of the hill. Surrounding the crate were 10 dummies, each carrying a weapon. He threw a quick glance towards the direction Sasuke should be coming from. Nothing yet. Good, that gives me at least 30 more seconds. The final dummies guarding the crate looked different from those he had encountered on his way here. They looked smoother, as if made with greater care. And they were all carrying weapons. 5 were carrying swords, 2 had spears and 3 more had kunais. Okay, this is getting old, but I am not letting that bastard beat me now, not now I'm so close. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. When the smoke cleared, the dummies were surrounded by 3 times their number in clones. Sorry, but I don't have time to play with you guys. Charge. The clones had been standing in a 3-row circle around the dummies. On Naruto's command, the first 2 rows charged into their opponents. The last row jumped straight up and threw their kunais at the dummies wielding kunais. Some kunai missed their targets, being dodged or fended off. Some of them struck other dummies, but none of those which did hit their targets seemed to be doing any damage. That wasn't the point though, as the kunais only were used as a distraction for the kunai wielding dummies, so they would not be able to target the flow of oncoming clones. Before the dummies could react to the attack, steel and wood had met flesh made shadow. Each dummy was now fighting a clone, some already had fallen in battle. But every time a clone was destroyed, a second one would strike the offending dummy in whatever weakness he exposed before it could recover his stance from attacking. It was a devastating strategy, but of little use in a battle with real people. In little more than 6 seconds it was all over. 15 clones and Naruto himself were all what was left of the 50 warriors that had entered combat. Naruto was leaning with his hands on his knees, catching his breath. After a few moments he felt sufficiently recovered and dragged himself towards the crate and positioned himself on top of it. The long run had exhausted him, his legs felt sore and his lungs were burning. He needed to train more on his physique. A ninja shouldn't show weakness and exhaustion clearly as a sign of one. Tomorrow he would add running a few laps around the village to his list of things to do. The clones had formed a circle around him, with their backs towards him sitting in the lotus position. There was no need for them anymore, but discarding them would just be a waste of chakra. Naruto didn't fully understood how or why, but there was something about having a multitude of clones around. Things seemed to be simpler. It was as if his mind became divided into smaller pieces, each thinking for themselves. He knew what every clone was thinking about and they knew every thought and desire of him. Sometimes he was surprised of what went on in the minds of the fellas. The clone directly in front of him was counting the time for Sasuke to arrive. The one to his right imagined various ways to get the crate to its destination, and other one wondered how Sasuke could get those fancy taijutsu moves. The one directly behind him was reliving the events that happened last night with Hinata. Naruto had enjoyed those moments of peace, just talking with someone. But he would see her again later today, so he let the clone alone with these thoughts. The best way he could think of working with the clones was as if his subconscious was almost completely removed and used by his creations, which kinda explained why he found everything so much simpler when he had some around and why he always felt a little wiser after he had meditated with them and they had disappeared. They all looked at different things that occupied his mind and gave those thoughts a lot of attention, sometimes solving the problems completely. Sasuke reached the open grass at the front clone's count of 257, being at lower ground he could not make out Naruto's form at the top of the hill. Ha! Looks like I'm there. Let's see what the grand finale at the top will hold in store. That poor Dobi didn't stand a chance in hell. Sasuke grinned at these thoughts and began the final climb to his goal. Ascending the hill robbed him of his vision of the top. When he finally reached it, however, he wasn't happy with what he saw. On top of the hill he saw the objective of his mission and before sat alone Naruto, leaning his back against the crate, casually lying in wait of him. What the? How the? This can't be right. It must be Genjutsu, cause there's no way. Sharingan. You're gonna copy the movements and chakra molding of me, sitting on my Jesus, they call you a genius. I figured that one out without even having seen it. Naruto. No, it's your Aunt Sherry. Who do you think? Genius. No, this is impossible. He couldn't have gotten here so fast. My pace was high and none of my encounters took me over 20 seconds. Naruto couldn't have possibly beaten me, yet here he stands. How? How? Easy. Allow me to demonstrate. Naruto got up to feet and joined his hands as if to mold chakra. With his Sharingan eyes Sasuke didn't see the blonde gathering any chakra at all, yet he kept this pose for a few seconds before yelling. Sitting no jutsu. After this the young genin smoothly sat himself on his ankles, leaned back against the crate and moved his feet a little forward so they stood comfortably. Think you pulled that one off, Uchiha. Anger and frustration shot out from Sasuke's face. How had this Dobi gotten here so fast? He couldn't have possibly gotten here so fast. Naruto couldn't be better than him. He was a loudmouthed clown, barely worthy of the title of ninja. Have I been slacking off? No. No way. They've been training hard every day. I can't have been slacking off, not with him still breathing. Then how? How did you get here that fast, you idiot? You're asking me and I'm the idiot. There's no way you could have beaten me here. You must have taken a shortcut. A shortcut? As in, shorter than a straight line, kinda shortcut. Yeah, sure, Sasuke. I took a shortcut, through a black hole. Sasuke's world was turning upside down. Naruto had beaten him. It was something he had long thought impossible, now proven to be truth. The blonde was right, he couldn't have possibly taken a shorter or faster path. At least he wasn't rubbing it in yet, something he hadn't expected from the loudmouth brat. Hey Uchiha, stop standing there and help me move this crate, will ya? I'd like to get on with my day. Naruto's legs were still sore of the long run, and carrying that crate back hadn't done them much good either. He had thought about leaving Sasuke alone with the crate, but had opted not to since there was no way the raven-haired boy could have gotten it delivered on his own. Naruto could have created a clone to help him carry the crate, but to carry it alone would require more strength than either of the teammates had. Since his legs wouldn't allow him any further physical training for the rest of the day, he opted for some quiet recovery time in the park. He took place on a bench and opened the book on prominent clans in Konoha that he had borrowed from the library. The book covered 3 clans: the Hyuga, the Uchiha, and the Aburame. Hinata's part of one of Konoha's most powerful clans. I'd have never imagined her as royalty. The first part handled the Hyuga, starting with the history of the clan since the founding of Konoha village. It wasn't the most thrilling piece of lecture for Naruto, but it would be a necessity to fulfill his plan. Besides, if he were to become Hokage, he would have to know more about the inner workings of the village. So far he had only read about the first 50 years of Konoha history, and already there seemed to be a complicated net of politics and diplomacy among the clans. Thereby came that at that time the great ninja war waged across the land, which didn't make things simpler. He had learned about the war in the academy, but never had the lessons been as intricate as the book described. 50 pages later, Naruto desperately needed a break. He had expected somewhat lighter literature. He put the book away in his bag, stretched his legs for the 3rd time that day, and strolled to the river. As he watched the flow of the river, he noticed little whirlpools here and there. He wandered over for a closer look at the phenomenon. He sat himself near the edge of the river and let his mind wander. How would my chakra look if I stepped on one of those? With a small one like this, I'll probably just flatten it out, but let's say I stood on top of a really strong one. Would it twist and turn my chakra? Single quote. In his mind he imagined his chakra taking the form of the little whirlpool, twisting and turning around itself. That's it. That's exactly what I've been doing all this time. He replayed the events of the night before in his head, imagining the twisting whirlpool of chakra in his hands. No, that's not quite right. It doesn't add up. I was releasing chakra from the entire palm of my hand, so the base should be pretty big. And the circular damage to my paperweight was a little smaller. So it would kinda look the other way around. But not entirely pointy at the top. Imagine I would have made it completely cone-shaped, I would have probably completely drilled through it. Hey, now that would be cool. If I could develop that technique, it would be as if I'd be punching people with a drill instead of just my fists. With renewed enthusiasm he stood up and wanted to run over to the forest to try out his theory on the trees, but then his legs cramped up again. Wow man, I really have to start working on those fast long-distance runs. It was 7:03 and Hinata had been waiting at Ichiraku for the last 6 minutes. She was sitting quietly in the corner of the stand, waiting in her shell, already almost completely forgotten in the old man's mind. I hope he hasn't forgotten about me. Please don't let him have forgotten me. No, he's probably just a little late. I shouldn't have come here so early. I only make myself more nervous if I show up early. Naruto wouldn't just forget about me. He would never break his word like that. It's only a few past 7, I'm sure he'll show up anytime now. But what if he doesn't? Oi, Hinata. The timid pupil-less girl startled as the blonde boy made an enthusiastic appearance. Hi, Naruto. Sorry I'm a little late. Overdid myself a little at training today. I hope I haven't kept you waiting too long. And no, it's okay, I was a little early. Oh, I trust Ikira-san has treated you well then. Who? What? You're kidding, right? Hey Ikira, don't tell me you have been ignoring my guest all the time she's been waiting. The old man turned around with a dull face, instantly forming to a smile when he recognized his most loyal customer. Oi Naruto. Gomen Nasai, I didn't know she was waiting for you. Ikira stepped over to the side where both youngsters were sitting and made a slight bow to the young girl. Ikira Kumara, at your service. Excuse me, but you seem to be lacking something in your eyes. Ikira. Baka, Hinata is a Hyuga. They are the most respected clan in Konoha, and they all have eyes like that. Oh, I get it. Too respected to eat a lowly little ramen stand he. My apologies Miss Hyuga-sama. Now may I be so kind as to take your order please? Ah, I'd like some miso ramen, please. Very well miss, I'll start right on it. Hey, what about me? What, you're still here? You better behave, little commoner. I am having a well-respected client right now. This place is finally getting some class. What the? I brought her here, old man. Sure you did, but then why did she show up before you? Anyo. Don't make me come over there old timer. Don't make me spike your ramen with wasabi again, slick. Anyo. I oughta beat you up with your own spoon Ikira. And I should put these chopsticks in a dark, warm and very uncomfortable place. Naruto. You still haven't fixed the light in the restroom. I always forget to buy a bulb when I'm in the store. I think I might still have one laying around at home, I'll bring it over later tonight. Thanks kid, now what will you have? Beef ramen, please. Sure. Fix you right up. The old man winked at Hinata and turned around again to his kettle. Nah Naruto. Oh, sorry Hinata, it's a little thing me and Ikira do from time to time. Oh, so, how was your day? It was okay. Kurenai-sensei had us training at Area 12 today, then we had to track down a little boy whose parents lost sight of him. We found him playing in the park. I bet you three would make a great team of hunter nins one day. Arigato. Hey Naruto, you two want that order to go. Hinata, would you mind if we went for a stroll? If I sit around too much, my legs'll be sore again. I don't mind, Naruto. To go will be fine, Ikira. Okay, here you go. I'll put yours on your tab, Miss Hinata's will be on the house. Hey, why is mine never on the house? Does it matter? You would have been paying for hers anyway, right? Right. Good. Now bon appetit. See ya later kid, and be sure to visit anytime Miss Hyuga-sama. Arigato, Kumara-san. The two young genin left the ramen stand. Naruto thought it best to leave the more crowded market area and took a narrow street where he knew few people walked around this time of day. He didn't know whether he did it for himself to avoid the glares of the adults, or for her, to avoid people seeing her with him. Chances were her family wouldn't like her to be hanging around with him. So Hinata, is there any place you'd like to go? 'Cause I actually have no idea of what I'm doing right now. There's a place in the forest not far from here where I often have lunch with my team. Sounds good to me. Lead the way, I'll be right behind ya. Hi. Few minutes later they arrived at a small open area in the forest. Naruto noticed this place was indeed often used. The grass was flat at certain places and there were traces of a recently made cooking fire. Nice place you guys got here. Arigato. Sue, how do you get along with your team? Well, okay, I guess. Kiba's nice, in his own way. Shino, well he rarely say anything at all, but he always knows what's to be done. What about Kurenai? Kurenai's a good person as well as teacher. She always looks after us and never puts us down. I like her. Seems like you got lucky then. You don't like your team, Naruto. What's there to like? I thought at the academy, that you liked. Sakura. Hinata's voice was even softer than it was normally. Her eyes fled down as she spoke, as if she regretted speaking the words before she said them. Every letter of them seemed to hurt her while she formed the words in her mind, yet it was a question of which she had to face the answer. Hey, guess I did back then. But I've come a long way since the academy. The blue-haired girl's eyes slowly looked up, showing a sparkle of hope. Really? Naruto seemed firmly focused in a particular piece of beef in his cup of ramen as he kept poking it with his chopsticks. Yeah, well, I honestly don't remember what I ever saw in her. I mean, she's pretty and all, but all she's ever interested in, or talks about or sides up with is Sasuke. I swear, the guy can't do anything wrong and I can't do a thing right for her. If he would set himself on fire one day, she'd probably praise him for the color of the flames and then join him. What about your sensei, Kakashi? Same story really, only he doesn't show it that much. I can't really call him a cold-hearted bastard, but I only hear him badmouth me. I've never heard him compliment me, while I never hear him complain about Sasuke. Even Sakura gets his thumbs up for her, perfect chakra control. Today at training I beat Sasuke to the package, tomorrow I'll probably be scolded for it. No matter what I do, at the end of the day they all still look at me as the Dobi. He poked viciously at the piece of beef and then scooped up a big portion of ramen. An uncomfortable silence fell between the two as they both looked down on their ramen, thinking of something better to talk about. So, Naruto-kun, how do you know Kumara-san so well? Oh, he opened his shop here in town a few weeks after I was released from the orphanage. I've been eating there ever since. Anyo, don't you ever get tired of ramen all the time? Well, on rare occasions, but there are a lot of different flavors so I get by. Besides, I don't really go there for the food. It's the service that does it. Ichiraku's the just about only place in town I get welcomed with a smile. Oh, but don't you ever cook at home? The blond boy blushed ever so slightly, scratching the back of his head before looking up with an innocent grin on his face. I can't cook. But those fish you made the other day. That was about the limit of my cooking abilities. Kakashi made those once when we were on a mission. It's not really haute cuisine either. You just take a fish, gut it and shove it on a stick. Anyone can do that. Would you like me to teach you? You'll do that. If you want to. Are you kidding me? That'll be great. When do we start? I could come over tomorrow if you like. Great. I'll make sure my kitchen is in order then. The two of them talked for another hour before they decided to go their own ways. Naruto headed home to pick up the lamp he promised and then left again to bring them to the old Ikira. Then he was off again, dashing for the woods to make use of what little daylight he had left. He started off about the same way he did last night, picking up a rock, gathering enough chakra in his hand to make it float and then making it rotate as fast as he could. Once again the rock suddenly shot out of his hand like the paper weight had last night. This time the rock had landed upside down so Naruto could inspect the bottom of it without burning his hands. The rock apparently was less resistant to the friction of his chakra, since the spiraling circle was much deeper this time and the grooves were showing much clearer. The circle was about 3 fingers diameter. Now how am I supposed to shrink you down at the top? The rest of the time he had, Naruto practiced his newly found jutsu on a tree, taking a more horizontal approach. It were some hours of trial, error and repeat, but in the end he had managed to shrink the top of his chakra cone to the diameter of his index finger. He was close, but would have to try again tomorrow since he wouldn't be able to check his progress in the dark. Once back home he remembered he would still have to get his kitchen in order. He pulled open the cupboard and took out the pots and pans that had come with the house. It had been 6 years since he last looked at them and over the course of time they had done nothing but gather dust, grease and all those other unidentifiable things that objects seem to cover themselves with after a while. He dreaded the sight of them as he put them all on the sink. It would take at least the best part of an hour to get them all in a presentable state. "Mon, I don't have time for this. I barely got any training done today and I have to get up early tomorrow." Without a second thought he created a clone and put him to work, while Naruto himself went off to his study. He read up on the next 5 fire jutsus in the book, familiarizing himself with the seals and the molding of chakra. After about half an hour he felt confident he would be able to successfully execute all 5 of them tomorrow. As far as ninjutsu went, he was fairly sure he was nearing Sasuke's level, but his problem lay in the field of taijutsu. But where does that get his moves? I've never seen that style anywhere else, so it must be self-taught. Still, it's way too evolved to be his own, so it must be a house style. Then there must be records of it somewhere. The clan's been around for over 150 years, so someone must have at least tried to take over or find a response to the Uchiha style. Then again, we are talking about a clan of copycats. One day I'll get to the bottom of this. For now I'll just stick to analyzing his moves, maybe later I'll take my chance in the library or go have a look-see at his place. By now the clone had finished up in the kitchen and had done some minor cleaning of the living room. There wasn't much to clean up anyway. Naruto never spent much time indoors. Being satisfied with his work, the clone discarded himself in a puff of smoke. Naruto himself spent another hour reading up on Hyuga history. There were still 15 pages of history before the book would handle about the Hyuga bloodline and their use of it in their Juken fighting style, but fatigue was getting to the blonde. The day had been a long one and tomorrow would be no better. Suddenly it seemed like the day wouldn't just give itself up so suddenly. Naruto was just about to put out his pants as he heard one of his floorboards creaking behind him. He knew his house and that floorboard didn't just creak on his own. Some parts of the roof did on windy days, but each part of the house had its own particular noise. Instinctively he grabbed for 2 kunai on his legs and twisted himself. Nothing to be seen, but he knew he wasn't alone in his home. He glanced around through the open part of the screen that separated his bedroom from the rest of his house, looking for any cast shadows or other traces of the intruder. I rarely ever get any visitors, let alone at this hour, so I'm not picky about them. But I do tend to get those who don't knock out as soon as possible. No answer. He tried sensing for chakra, something that wasn't really his specialty, but he got lucky. He should be about a yard behind the screen, a few foot to the right. Silently he created a shadow clone. Without making any sound, Naruto moved so his opponent would be right in front of him, separated only by the thin paper screen. His clone then suddenly jumped into the other room, ready to throw his first kunai, but then suddenly yelling, "Stoop!" at his creator. Naruto was about to throw his kunai at the intruder, but then suddenly lowered it as he heard the clone's mental signal and the supporting scream. The clone holstered his weapons and then returned to the bedroom. Naruto put on his shirt and on his turn entered the living room. I'd never suspected anybody who had sprinted 5 miles would be jumping around this way later on the day. It's not something I would recommend to everybody either. So are you gonna tell me anything about it, or are you just gonna hush up about it all and pretend like nothing happened? Tell you about what? How about the fact that your chakra control has drastically raised so suddenly, or how you improved your taijutsu? And maybe most interesting of all, how you did those 2 at the same time. What's wrong with me improving my skills as a ninja? There's nothing wrong with that, I'm just worried about you losing your skills as a person. You seem to be growing more distant from your teammates. Naruto thought about his sensei's comment for a second and then started laughing slightly. He, how can you say that, Kakashi-sensei, when there barely ever was a team to begin with? This finally pulled Kakashi's eye away from his little book. He gave a serious look to his student and finally said, "I know you and your team don't always get along, Naruto, but I could always depend on you when the need arose. Now, however, it seems things are getting out of hand. So of course the problem must lay with me. That's utter crap, sensei. Why don't you bother Sasuke about it? It's not like he's got the perfect personality. Or what about Sakura? No, forget Sakura. We both know that she's a total lost case. How would your team spirit be if you were paired up with a fancy training dummy with a henge on it and its bitch? I see. So do you want to transfer to another team? And then what? Doing missions with two other people who hate my guts, not just for breaking up their perfectly good team, but also for being what I am. So we could have two worthless teams. That's sensei. The team just has to accept me for who I am, and if they can't handle that, so be it. But I'm not running away. Naruto unconsciously scratched his left hand after reaching the end of his sentence. Kakashi noticed, and as he looked down on it, he remembered the first time he had heard those words from his student. That mission had changed his perspective of Naruto a great deal. He wondered if his student would reveal another part of himself again. Okay, the silver-haired Junin said as he started reading his book again, that'll do for now. But if the situation does not improve over the next few weeks, I'm booting you out myself. That was a prospect neither teacher or student looked forward to. It would surely put a stop to Naruto's plan. Kakashi didn't want to put his student through this either, but if he didn't, there was no telling what Naruto could get himself into. Besides, he liked Sasuke, but one of them on his team was enough. After Kakashi took his leave, Naruto once again headed for his bedroom. He was surprised to find his clone there, sitting in a meditating position. Making a quick mental contact with it, he learned that the clone wanted to think about some things for a while. Naruto was little confused about this answer, but disregarded it as he was too tired for discussion, and since the clone was probably right. There was a lot to think about. Naruto awoke that morning feeling completely renewed. He grabbed a towel and headed for the shower. Upon returning to the kitchen area, he found out that his clone really had been thinking about some things. On the table he found a stack of papers written in his own handwriting. Apparently his clone had spent the night thinking about a training schedule for a week. Just about everything was taken into account: endurance training, improving chakra control, observing Sasuke's taijutsu training, studying theory while waiting for Kakashi, training with his team, jutsu practice, taijutsu training in recreational time. The training would be extensive, taking optimal use of all the time of the week. He was going through some of the details of the training as suddenly his watch started beeping. Apparently the clone had taken the liberty of programming his alarm. He quickly looked back at the schedule and saw that he should start training already. He quickly grabbed an apple, put the schedule in a pocket on his vest, and headed out the door. His first stop would be the Uchiha mansion. As he passed the place, he created a clone that should last for about 2 hours and passed him a notebook and a pen. Both nodded towards each other in understanding before the clone made its way into the Uchiha courtyard, and Naruto went on with what now became his morning ritual. It was still 7 in the morning, but already the village was fully awoken. The blonde Genin ran further towards the most nearby gate that would lead out of the village. From that point we followed the village walls clockwise until he came to the river that flowed partly around Konoha. Naruto's morning jog suddenly took another turn as he leapt for the water, and he continued running across it. The river followed the village up to the south gate and then continued streaming further away into the country. It took Naruto nearly an hour before he reached it, which meant he had almost an entire hour left before he had to show up at the bridge to meet with the rest of his team. As he arrived back home, he put his clothes in the machine, after taking out the papers, and took another shower. After he put his clothes in the dryer, he finally had a real breakfast and then took off again. On the way to the meeting point, he passed the Uchiha's house again and quickly entered the courtyard, where he picked up the clone's notes, leaving the rest of the notebook and the pen where they were, to be used again the next morning. As he neared the meeting spot, he looked for a nice location to spend the next few hours reading. Once found, he created another clone which he sent to the bridge. Maybe at some time in the future he would start doing some reading with his team, but there was no reason for them to know about this particular literature. Besides, the sooner he would finish this book, the sooner that problem's solution would probably arise. So much about him had changed in but a matter of weeks, so even Naruto himself had any idea of to what he would be doing the next one. His clone arrived at the bridge and was greeted with Sasuke's complete ignoring of his existence and surprisingly by an accusation of Sakura. "You're late." "I am." The clone looked down to his watch. "Wow. I sure am. By 2 whole minutes. By God. How could I? Please forgive my tardiness, Miss Haruna-san." Sakura's only reply was the dirty look she threw him. The clone just walked past her and sat himself in the lotus position in wait for Kakashi's arrival. Naruto himself, however, wasn't in the most zen state of mind. Last night he had read that what he had heard to be true, as he had read the beginning of the arrogant Uchiha clan. Now he was finally finding out about the complete powers of the Hyuga bloodline. Their 360 degrees of vision, the ability to see through solid objects, to see one's opponent's chakra stream, and more. And the Uchiha descended from this clan. He knew the Sharingan could be used to predict someone's movements in battle, to copy jutsus of nearly any kind, and to see through genjutsu, but now he had read about the Hyuga, he wondered if there was more. He hated those eyes. He hated them. He hated them and the skull that carried them, he hated them and the blood that ran through them. He hated that Uchiha. He resisted the urge to rip the book to shreds and slowly put it down. He needed to calm down. Only half an hour had passed, so that should still give him plenty of time. Time that could be made use of, instead of being totally wasted, waiting on some bridge, being around some total what piece of shish. Calm down, Naruto, you're trying to calm down. The orange-clad genin gently leaned backwards against the tree. Closing his eyes, he reached for the 3 leaves he had picked earlier and calmly let them float on his forehead and his hands. As the 2 in his hands slowly started turning, Naruto let his mind flow freely. It wasn't long before Naruto had once again found his peace. He stopped the rotation on his right hand and dropped the leaf on the grass, then he picked the one above his forehead out of the air and did the same. He continued spinning the leaf in his left hand as he was reading the book with a content look on his face. On the bridge, however, things suddenly started to get more complicated. "Nay, Naruto." The silent clone turned his head towards the young Kunoichi as he opened his eyes. He had hoped to be able to spend the greater part of his time meditating. 2 hours was a long time for any clone. "Yes. What's up with you lately?" The clone broke eye contact and started staring at a different direction. "What do you care? I just want to know if you're okay," Sakura said while she on her turn lowered her head. "I'm fine." "Then why are you acting so different lately?" "What's wrong with the way I act?" "It's just not like you." "Well, since you weren't happy with the old me, that shouldn't be much of problem, right?" "But I liked him better than this one." "Yeah, I'm sure having a clumsy, loudmouth baka who nearly always acts on impulse can be amusing at times." "I didn't mean UW'er." "Then you shouldn't have kept saying it. It's simple, Haruna. All the time you've been telling me to be more like him," as he threw a glance at his other teammate. "Well, I assure you that in a few weeks you won't be able to tell the difference." Sasuke never was one to get involved into others' discussions, but this concerned him. The occurrences of yesterday still going through his mind might having something to do with his edginess. "Ha, you'll never be able to reach up to my level, Dobi. You might as well stop trying and save yourself the embarrassment." He had expected a flaming reply from the Dobi, instead he just slowly adjusted his eyes to his direction and spoke in a quiet, diplomatic voice. "Hey Uchiha, just for your information, I haven't told anyone about yesterday's occurrence. But I'm planning on repeating it as often as I can in the future." So if you don't want your reputation of the genius Uchiha prodigy smothered too badly, I would keep stupid comments like that to myself if I were you. Sasuke's eyes burned in fury towards the clone. His pride had been given a huge smack in the face by what happened yesterday, and he wasn't about to let that happen again. Regaining his composure, he quickly replied. Too bad for you, Dobi, because whatever happened yesterday will have been the only time something like that occurred. We shall see about that, Uchiha, we shall see. Sakura had been quiet during their dialogue. Aside from the fact that she had no idea what had happened yesterday, she now wasn't sure whether she wanted to know anymore. Until a minute ago she had been sure Sasuke-kun had won Naruto's stupid challenge, but now nothing seemed certain anymore. So much had changed so fast recently, and she had no idea what could happen next. Naruto made the switch with his clone after Kakashi arrived when they headed towards the river. Apparently they were given a D-ranked mission of cleaning up the riverbanks and everything that floated along. To everyone's surprise, Kakashi had given Sakura the task of swimming in the river and throwing everything she came across ashore. After a slight protest of the pink-haired Kunoichi, he had reminded her that her stamina definitely still needed improvement. Naruto doubted that was the only reason she was given that assignment after Sakura returned a few minutes later in a red bathing suit. Normally any team would have been at all day and could still only be half done. Though some would be hard-pressed to admit, Naruto's Kage Bunshin had once again been a blessing for the entire team. They had finished in nearly 4 hours and therefore had time for another quick mission of doing some groceries for the elderly. Naruto grinned. He hated these stupid missions as much as any other genin, but he needed the money. If only they, LD pay the teams for the individual work every member did. He looked up his watch and saw he still had 2 hours left before he would have his first cooking lesson with Hinata. He glanced at the schedule and headed back to the place where he had been practicing his fire jutsus 2 days ago. Once he arrived, it wasn't long before streams of fire were flying over the river. Half an hour later, a huge explosion followed. Water splashed everywhere, towered by a dome of fire as Naruto's first grand fireball hit the surface of the streaming river. Naruto was ecstatic. He was closing up on his rival in record time. Soon the first stage of his plan would be complete. It wouldn't be long before the Uchiha's ninjutsus held no secrets more to him. There was still a long way to go, but soon he would see the downfall of Uchiha Sasuke. He hurried across the water, his clothes a little singed. That fire flower jutsu had been bigger than he had imagined. He had been careful not to put too much chakra in the technique, and it had still been nearly 1.5 times the size of what he had seen Sasuke throw at Kakashi during the last time they had sparred against their sensei. He definitely had an edge over the bastard considering stamina and chakra reserves. But it wasn't enough. He remembered yesterday's training mission and the effect it had on his legs. No, he definitely needed to work on that. And as he entered the village over the water's surface again, he saw just the way how to do it. Entering his apartment, he tossed his clothes in the basket and took a shower. He still had 15 minutes before Hinata would come over. Plenty of time, or so he thought. He was just shampooing his hair as he heard a knock on the door. Quickly wrapping a towel around his waist, he opened up and stuck his head through the opening. Hinata, you're early. G Gomen Naruto-kun. I didn't think why you'd mind. Are you kidding? I don't mind at all. As a matter of fact, I hate waiting for people. Come right in and make yourself at home. I'm just gonna finish up my shower. Be with ya in 10 minutes. With that, he hurried back in the bathroom, leaving Hinata by herself in the door opening. To say the girl was nervous was understatement. She had never even been in a boy's room before. Let alone been in her crush apartment. Carefully she put her first foot past the door, closed her eyes and breathed deeply before turning to close the door. The room was messier than Hinata had expected. Not that it was particularly messy, it was just that in the Hyuga mansion everything was perfectly ordered. She kinda liked it this way. It made you feel comfortable, like not everything had to be perfect all the time. Putting the bag of groceries on the table, she felt the nervousness fade away, making place for curiosity. Quietly, she moved towards the cupboards, intending to find out whatever she could about her crush by going through his kitchen supplies. She couldn't help but giggle as the two first cabinets were filled with nothing but instant ramen cups. A third one revealed what must have been a month's supply of breakfast cereals. In a way, she found it sad, however. How could a person live of nothing but ramen and breakfast cereals? On the other hand, she felt good that she was actually doing more good for him than she had initially imagined. Further investigation of the cupboards had turned up what looked like a brand new set of cooking utensil, chopsticks, and old bowl which he no doubt used for his breakfast and ramen, and some cleaning objects. Looking at her watch, she noticed only 3 minutes had passed yet, plus she heard the water of the shower still running, so she still had some time to snoop around. The room itself seemed to be plastered with post-it notes of things to do, some having dates on it of over 4 months ago. On the table she found a few pieces of paper which consisted of a training schedule and a bunch of side notes concerning it. She noticed it was packed full. Naruto-kun is certainly pushing himself to the limit. Looking back at the schedule, her heart jumped a beat when she noticed her name written at the current time with a little smiley face behind it. The odd thing about the whole thing, though, was that the side notes seemed to be written in third person, yet the handwriting was definitely Naruto's. With newfound confidence, Hinata headed for the screen that separated Naruto's bedroom from the kitchen. Silently she opened it up and found herself blushing at the sight of Naruto's pajamas on his unmade bed. Aside from a few lingering ramen cups and the messy desk, the room was fairly tidy. Then she noticed some pieces of broken glass spread around an upside-down picture frame. A single corner of it was heavily dented and the frame was coming apart as pieces no longer fit. Carefully she picked it up and saw it was his team picture. Hinata was shocked to view the extent of Naruto's problems with his team. Every ninja she knew cherished their first team picture. Even her father had the picture of the 3-man Hyuga team he had worked with framed and sitting on his desk. The sudden lack of the sound of running water abruptly yanked her out of the memory. Quickly she put the picture back on the floor and hurried back to the kitchen. Very uncharacteristically she slid it on her knees, bending backwards to fit underneath the table and end in front of the kitchen cabinet that contained Naruto's pots. She managed to get a hold of the big wok she needed right as Naruto emerged from his bathroom wearing a white t-shirt and a simple black boxer short. It wasn't long before the two genin were idly chattering away while Naruto admired Hinata's cooking skill and was even taking notes on to cut everything up and when to add what. Hinata was surprised about this as she had always known her golden-haired crush to be enthusiastic about new things that interest. She had never seen him taking notes about anything. "You never used to do that," she remarked as she added the pieces of meat to the wok. "Do what? Take notes on things? Oh. Well, this just helps me remember things better. There's been a lot of things I've been learning lately. Just look at them as study notes." He smiled while writing the time and way Hinata added the meat to the big pot. "What kind of things? I'm afraid that if I tell you I will have to kill you. And since killing the heiress to the Hyuga clan probably isn't a very smart thing to if I wanna become Hokage, I'd rather not tell," he winked at her. She smiled. "What are you up to, Naruto-kun?" "Secret mission," was his only answer as he raised his finger up to his mouth indicating silence and blinked an eye. "Is that why you're training so hard? How do you know about that?" he exclaimed in a panicked fashion. Your training schedule is laying on the table," she squeaked apologetically. "Oh," he scratched behind his head, "another dead giveaway, huh?" He sighed. "Just don't tell anyone about my training, please." Seeing the disappointed look on his face, Hinata couldn't refuse his request. "Of course, Naruto-kun. But why don't you want anyone to know of your hard work?" "Oh, it's not that I don't want them to know, I just don't want them to know yet." Demo. Isn't it bad for your teamwork if your partners don't know what your true capabilities are? Nay, how good does teamwork need to be to weed some gardens or clean a few beaches? Demo. He. Don't worry about it, Hinata. In a few weeks it's all gonna be over. I just don't want to see you get in trouble, Naruto-kun. Sakura was just finishing up on her last lap around training field 48. She was heavily bruised and at the end of her breath when she finally arrived at the exit, yet she was smiling. Today had been a day full of good training. Although at first she had stared daggers at her sensei when he told her to swim in the river for the duration of the mission, after a few minutes she had understood his reasons. Swimming in the river's stream had seriously worn out her legs, yet kept her muscles cooled down so she didn't feel stiff afterwards. After finishing the day's last mission she had followed her sensei's advice and headed straight for training field 48. Beating up the dummies had been particularly satisfying today as she wasn't depressed like yesterday but rather ticked off at Naruto's recent comments in the morning. Somehow she couldn't shake it off as easily as the usual stupid things he often it had distracted her more than she was aware of at first. She had been given a couple of nasty bruises before she finally admitted it to herself. Why can't I answer that damn question of him? I mean there's gotta be some good reasons I could come up with. Sasuke's definitely the hottest guy in town, he's smart, #1 rookie of the year and, come on there's gotta be more to it than that. I'm not that shallow, am I? No I'm not, I just can't come up with it right now. Besides I'm sure Sasuke likes me. Why am I so sure about that again? Sigh. Maybe Naruto's right. I mean he never talks to me, doesn't smile or looks at me funny. But he's so gorgeous. Sometimes I would just want to rip his clothes off in. Okay, enough with the hormones. But what if that's just all there's to it? Or if Naruto's just playing with our heads? What was that between him and Sasuke again this morning? I haven't told anyone what happened, but plan to do so again from now on. What happened yesterday will never happen again. Coming from my voice that could mean anything from them having wild homo adventures on that hill yesterday too. So Naruto won yesterday. Has he really changed so much? On the way home she decided to drop by the library to grab a new genjutsu she could start practicing for the rest of the day. She found a suitable one in a few minutes' time. Spending a great deal of her time in the library she knew the place almost as the back of her hand and most of the clerics knew her. Kazumo greeted her from the moment he'd seen her. Ohio Haruna-san, I expected you here 3 hours ago. Hi Kazumo. I was training a little on my taijutsu in area 48 inches. Ow. So I don't have to smack up any of your teammates for giving you those bruises you got on you there. She giggled as Kazumo did some mock stances. No Kazumo, I'm a big girl, I can take care of myself. Besides it's all part of training. Just as well, I don't think I would have had much of a chance against Uchiha-sama anyway. Hey, you tell him to come by again anytime, okay? As you sure know we've got lots of useful jutsus laying around here, plus if he comes around here more, maybe he'll get us some more visitors. Sasuke came by the library. Sure. He sometimes comes early in the morning. Sometimes that Uzumaki kid comes along. Sasuke and Naruto. Together at the library. Maybe I was closer with the homo adventures after all. Yes. Something wrong, Sakura-san. Quote. Oh no, nothing. It's just that I gotta go. See ya next time Kazumo. Something's definitely going on here. Sasuke would never hang out with Naruto on his own or for no reason. They're either planning something or Naruto is up to his tricks again. And the way he's been acting lately I'm betting on the last one. How could that doby have beaten me? Sasuke pondered as he performed another back kick to the training dummy followed by a dragon kick to another one to finally perform a back flip and plant 2 kunai in the back of a third one. If I even can't beat Naruto in a stupid little race, how am I supposed to ever kill him? The dark image of his brother flashing before his eyes. What's up what that Dobie anyway? 3 weeks ago you couldn't get him to shut his mouth, now he's suddenly this quiet philosopher. It's been days since he said or did anything stupid and he's been staring at me an awful lot during training lately. Could it be that he's learning from me? Can't blame him. Maybe there's some hope for him left. He grinned as he proceeded to launch another beating on the dummies. It was just a stupid little race anyway. After walking Hinata back to her family's mansion, Naruto dashed back home, determined to use every last bit of his day. At home, Naruto started going over the abundant collection of notes on the Uchiha's taijutsu that his daily morning clones had been keeping. Studying every little detail, imagining the moves in his head and playing back all the fights he had ever witnessed or had with the Uchiha, he began cross-referencing in his mind. Looking back at everything in slow motion and seeing some of the moves written down in a nice analyzed fashion, he began to notice some basics. The style seemed to be based around distraction and guiding the opponent into the position you want him to. It seemed to be making more sense now, the way he often occupied his opponent's hands by striking some fast, but easily blockable punches or kicks to finally land a hard blow when they couldn't see it coming or react to it on time. That would make sense. The Sharingan has the ability to predict an opponent's movement, so if the taijutsu style could make you guide your opponent's movements, it would be all that more effective and easily exploitable for them. This does make some things more troublesome. Maybe Naruto should have gone straight to bed after arriving home, since it seemed troublesome things had a knack of appearing in group. Maybe Naruto should have gone straight to bed after arriving home, since it seemed troublesome things had a knack of appearing in group. There was a knock on his door. Kakashi can say what he want about me losing my people skills, but I'm seeming to get an increasing amount of late-night visitors. Opening the door, he recognized the flurry of pink hair before he saw Sakura's face. Maybe he should have kept looking at her hair, because her face looked much less inviting. His own eyebrows dropped to a lower position as well. Hi Naruto, can I come in? Well, from the expression on your face I'd say that's probably a bad idea, but you don't look as if you're gonna take no for an answer either, would you? No. Give me 5 seconds, he said as he closed the door again and created a few kage bunshin to clean his living room from all the scrolls, notes and papers that had anything to do with his own mission. Come in. If anything, Sakura's face had become darker. It probably had something to do with having the door shut in her face. What was that all about? Can't a guy clean his place a bit before he receives any guests? It still looks messy in here, she snorted arrogantly. You should have seen it 5 seconds ago. Forgetting the current conversation, Sakura sat down on a chair and leaned back with a grin. You know, I heard something interesting today. What's that? It seems you and Sasuke have been visiting the library together. Maybe. So. What do you mean, so? The two of you wouldn't hang around together willingly unless Konoha was coming to an end. And are you gonna tell me what's going on, or should I go ask Sasuke? Who told you? Naruto asked without giving a moment of pause. I've got a reliable source. Oh, I bet you do, don't you, you little book brain? He teased with a big sarcastic smile, silently wishing he hadn't sat down himself, so he could have pet her on the head like a good little doggy. Shut up, idiot. I don't have to take that crap from you. Now tell me what you're doing or I'll report it. Report what exactly? How about impersonating a fellow shinobi at an official institute? Identity theft. Fraude. That sounds pretty serious, Sakura. Are you sure you can make him hard? I've got a Chunin witness. Oh, you mean this guy? Naruto now simply leaned back and formed his familiar ram seal, creating a perfect replica of the library clerk. I can imagine how the lineup would be. Hands still in the ram seal, suddenly there was a row of copies of both him and Sasuke in the apartment. Next to the clerk, the image of the Hokage had appeared with his hand on the clone's shoulder. Take your time, kid. Which was the pair that checked out the books and scrolls? Anything else? Now Sakura seemed a little set back. Naruto was ridiculing her and actually having a point. No, but even if I can't prove it's you, that would only lead to a deeper investigation because someone would be going around imitating Konoha ninja. Naruto indeed knew that could be trouble. On the other hand, he knew this wasn't any time to back down and show doubt. You're still assuming I did something wrong. You see, I've got a library card too, you know. In that case, I think Kazuma will be real happy to know you've been fooling him into thinking you were friends with Sasuke. Oh no, that would mean I'll lose all that extra service, not to mention I'll probably lose my invitation to the annual book ball. The blonde sarcastically acted with added dramatic motions. Don't think I won't do it, and that there won't be consequences. Fine, whatever. Do what you want. Good, I will. Okay, but just know, I'm a lot better at this than you are. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Now piss off. Don't talk to me like that, she yelled as she jumped out of her chair to punch him in the face. He dropped under her arm and threw his body against her waist while grabbing her knees, causing her to fall over with him on top of her. He quickly pinned her down by sitting on her stomach and grabbing both her arms. You should really stop doing that. It's annoying and I'm not gonna keep taking it. Get of me, you pervert. That not what you'd say if he sat on top of you. Promptly he changed in Sasuke, including the serious look on his face. Sakura, are you sure you're ovulating? I still have to train to kill some guy, so unless you wanna revive my clan I don't have time to play. That's not funny. No, of course it's not. Do you see me smile? If you do, tell me, 'cause I don't have time for that either. Naruto changed back to himself. He's not like any of that. No. Okay, let me try again. This time he changed with a big cloud of ninja smoke and reappeared as a half Sasuke, lying with a single leg between Sakura's, cupping her face with one hand and holding her hand in the other. I love you, Sakura-chan. I'm a fool for not seeing it sooner. I hope you can forgive me, he whispered gently in her ear. Sakura didn't say anything until Naruto undid the hinge. Now that one had you going for a while, hadn't it? He grinned. Get off of me, Naruto, now, she said with nothing but serious anger in her face. I got off of you quite a while ago, Sakura. Perhaps it's time you got off of him, he said as he stood up and walked to the door. Now, unless there's anything else you want of me, get out of my house. With that he closed the door behind her, leaving the angry Kunoichi alone in the streets. Now, where was I? Oh yeah, Uchiha Taijutsu style. This could take a while. Well, what did I expect? I knew I couldn't pull this off overnight, and it was about time I learned a decent style anyway. Besides, it'll give me some time to think about that damn Sharingan. I'll start on it tomorrow. I'll stick to chakra control for the rest of the day. The floating leaf method had now almost become natural to Naruto, so the rest of the evening he had practiced it in combination with the walking on walls technique, over the safety of his bed. 5 a.m., Konoha, Eastern Gate, guard post number 5. Hey Mobisu, do you see that? No, what? Someone on the wall at 3 o'clock. I don't see nothin'. On the inside. He's coming this way. Who is it? Can't tell. It's not that rock kid or guy anyway. They'll be here by now. It better not be. Hokage-sama forbid them because they were creating structural damage. He's wearing orange. Baka. What kinda ninja wears orange unless he has a death wish? Hey, I know him. It's that Uzumaki kid. What the hell is he doing here? Probably training. What else? He defoled the Hokage monument. I bet he's not up to any good here either. Bah, that's over a year ago. He hasn't done anything since. He has perverted the Hokage's grandson. You never liked the little kid to begin with anyway. He stole the forbidden scroll. The case report reads he was tricked by Mizuki. Quote. I'm keeping an eye on him. He's up to something alright. Baka. Mobisu exclaimed as he slapped his colleague against the back of his head. Now get back to work. Training had been a blast today, as Kakashi had been happy with their swift missions yesterday and saw no problem having Sasuke and Naruto spar while he did some taijutsu training with Sakura. This is excellent. I've got at least 10 minutes to completely beat him to a bloody pulp without Kakashi to interfere. But then again, I might as well do some actual training with this opportunity and see how much I can predict his movements. The blonde grinned to himself, which gave him a strange look from Sasuke. What are you smiling about? Thinking how much you're gonna enjoy getting your kicked, Doby? No, I was actually imagining what piece of your pride and arrogance I'm gonna strip you of today. And how by the end of the week you'll be nothing more than a sad mixture of fear, hatred and embarrassment. That had the desired effect the blonde was going for. Sasuke immediately opened up with a grand fireball, giving Naruto the perfect chance to hide from view, using a combination of Kawarimi and Kage Bunshin. Another advantage of his improved chakra control was that it gave him the ability to make his clones a further distance away. Now while his clone was fighting Sasuke, Naruto himself was getting comfortable in the canopy of a nearby tree. A slight henge had made his clothes take on a more natural look, blending him better with the leaves. All he had to do now was sit back, relax and keep the Uchiha from facing his direction a lot. Today he felt like playing the Uchiha for all he was worth. About 4 minutes had passed and Naruto was at about his 14th clone right now. That included the 2 extra he created to take note of the Uchiha's moves during the entire battle. This was worth gold. He couldn't wait to try out everything he was seeing right now. He had been trying to orchestrate the battle so that Sasuke showed him exactly what he needed to see, the absolute basics of the Uchiha fighting style, gradually building up to more complicated maneuvers. This was the beauty of Kage Bunshin combined with great chakra control and an enormous amount of chakra and stamina. Occasionally, when he thought he recognized a move from his notes, he would have a clone try to hit him where he theoretically figured there to be a weakness. He was often right. Naruto however never had been one to sit down however and couldn't resist getting back in there so he could finish the job himself. This was getting on Sasuke's nerves. It seemed like Naruto was everywhere. Well, it was always like that, but normally he used to get at least the occasional shot at him. Right now he had hit and hurt nothing but clones or logs, while he was already sporting several bruises and panting. At a certain point in the fight the bastard had even used Kawarimi with a kunai, giving Sasuke a nasty cut on his lower arm. It wasn't that the clones were any trouble for him, the most basic moves and combos seemed to do the trick just nicely, which made it strange since Naruto usually gave him a better fight than this, but then again, he couldn't remember hitting Naruto for sure in this fight. Okay guys, that's enough. Kakashi appeared on the stage, reading his familiar orange book. Demo, Kakashi-sensei, I was just about to finish him off. Kakashi had walked up to them and laid his hand on Naruto's shoulder. I saw Naruto, you were great. Not a single hit on you, huh? However, you did use a huge amount of chakra, so tone that down unless you want to fall down on the battlefield cause of chakra exhaustion. Naruto smiled and dispelled his clones in a poof of smoke, leaving the field empty except for some stray kunai and the usual leaves, sticks and stones. Kakashi looked sternly at Sasuke. I'm disappointed in you, Sasuke. You underestimated your opponent and didn't think defensively enough. Even with the Sharingan you couldn't evade the hits of such weak clones, while you could destroy them so easily. You should have known something was going, didn't look underneath and generally you, poof, Ed. Kakashi had suddenly changed into another Naruto and uppercutted Sasuke a few yards across the training area. Upon landing he was jumped by 4 clones who grabbed his hands and legs, preventing him from using seals or struggling free, each clone holding a kunai at a vital point on his body. What was it you said about never reaching your level? Naruto said as he casually strolled into Sasuke's view. Only a death glare was his answer. Naruto. That's enough. The real Kakashi had meanwhile chosen this as an appropriate moment to come and check on his students. He was surprised at the outcome, but couldn't deny the brilliant finish Naruto had made. Nice job, although your tactic was a little borderline. What? He gets to spit fire at me, but I can't use a simple henge. You have a point there. Ha, see. Victory is mine, fair and square. He shouted as through a grin at his teammate. Meanwhile, no one had noticed two squirrels making their way into Naruto's backpack to only disappear in a cloud of smoke. I didn't hit him once. I didn't hit him once. The bastard was just playing with me. How did he continuously keep using Kawarimi with his clones? He couldn't have just been hiding somewhere. He always needed to be close by his goddamn cage bunchins to create them. He's at genjutsu, so, a henge to hide somewhere in the middle of the area. No, I should have picked that up with my Sharingan. And why can't I copy that jutsu? It's only one hand seal, half the time he doesn't even seem to use it anymore. And how can he make so many? It's a freaking Junin level technique which Kakashi doesn't even use unless he absolutely has to, so it should use a huge amount of chakra. Rarg. That's the second time this week this happens. And this wasn't some stupid race, he had the chance to actually kill me. With a grunt the Uchiha lifted himself of the ground. HMPF, since when did you start to think things through, Doby? He mumbled as he put his hands back in his pockets. Only a few days before you started to lose. Can it you too? That's an order. Kakashi sighed and seemed to think things over for a moment. Another heavy breath escaped his nose before continuing. Okay. Here's the deal, I'm not supposed to be telling you this, but in less than 2 weeks the Chunin exams are held here in Konoha. Instantly the two boys were silenced and listening to their sensei with full attention. Thought that would get your attention, he said as he continued reading his book. Well, what? What about the Chunin exams? Oh, I was just thinking about registering you three, but if teamwork has stumbled to this level, you three won't even survive, so never mind. Both boys gave a stern look to one another. Eventually Naruto looked back up to his sensei. Isn't there any other way to become Chunin? You just had to open up your big mouth, didn't you? What exactly did he say this time? Hey, I can't help it, none of you has a sense of humor. Besides, you weren't exactly looking thrilled either. At least I kept my mouth shut about it. Yeah, well, you always keep shut your mouth, so you didn't exactly help there. Will one of you tell me what the hell this is all about? Chunin exam, both of them replied at the same time. What? 2 weeks from now, the biannual Chunin exam will be held in Konoha. Yeah, and if we're good boys and girls he'll think about registering us. You think he's serious? I think so. Well, if he's thinking of just dangling a candy in front of us to see if we'll do a trick, he'll be in for a nasty surprise. Do you guys think we're ready? I am. Sasuke-kun. Quote. Yes. Well, if you and Kakashi sensei say so. Okay, so we finally all agree on one thing. Now can we please get on with climbing this stupid rock? I've got other stuff to do today. That being said, the three continued to climb Mount Ashurnabibi, their only protection a 3-foot rope that attached them to their teammates. 2 weeks until the Chunin exams. Can't wait. Man, that felt good today. Oh yeah, that extra chakra control rocks. I could have beat him while eating some ramen. Am I gonna kick when I'm finished learning an actual taijutsu style or what? And maybe just a pinch more chakra control and I'll be creating clones by just blinking my eyes. Man, this is gonna rock. Maybe after this is over, I'll develop my own taijutsu style. Keijishin. There's a point. What's the Uchiha's style called? Yakume Amaka's, a relative new style, a mere 120 years, that was developed by Uchiha Mantaro, shortly after the Uchiha Rebellion. The style's basic principle is to let the user control his opponent's movements by use of natural reactions. It's mainly a offensive style since the Sharingan already gave such a defensive bonus. It is a closed technique, only 4 non-clan members have ever been reported to have learned, 3 of which disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The clan claims the technique requires the user to possess a Sharingan, but that claim has been disputed. So Naruto learned later that evening, after 4 hours of rigorous training at the riverside. Thank God that wasn't all for nothing then, he smiled as he wiped the sweat of his brow, laid the book back aside and stripped down to get a shower. Oh, look what the cat dragged in. Have you decided to honor us with a visit today after all? The old man growled, looking sternly while waving his spoon around. Ikira, you break my hearth. What have I done to deserve this? Naruto overacted, making him look like a soap opera actor. Where were you yesterday? I was, striking a dramatic pause, on an important mission. Saving the daimyo's brother's daughter's cousin's Pullman from a band of hungry wolves and the men that hunted the wolves for their furry tails in Yunchuri. Ikira whistled between his teeth for the impressive little monologue, but still replied, liar. I know you were having dinner with that Hyuga girl, looking away from him, holding his heart as if broken. I swear Ikira, it didn't mean anything. I just did it to get into her panties. The old man shook his head a little as to say he found it a little touchy but he would go along with it. Do you swear that's all there is to it? Yes. Yes Ikira I swear. Once I go steady with her and won't have to be romantic to get some nookie I'll never do it again. Ikira's daughter Ayame now couldn't hold her laughter anymore. She and 2 other regulars who had at least come to bear with the presence of Naruto burst out in laughter, the old man and Naruto following in suit. After the place had calmed down a little and Naruto had taken up his usual place at the counter, the Ikira leaned up to him and mumbled quietly, so, you thinking about it? What? No, of course not, Hinata's a friend. Then why not? Ikira, I'm 12, don't ya think that's a little young? Baka. TWOK. This last reply actually earning him the wrath of the great and all-powerful mace of Ramen. It was only once or twice every month that he beat the blonde over his head with his spoon, since he had to take another one afterwards and clean the instrument of judgment by boiling it in water. Hear the lessons of the great and all-powerful mace of Ramen, for its wise counsel will protect you in life and see to it that by the end of the day you'll always still have money to come buy more delicious and sustaining ramen. The first lesson of the great and all-powerful mace of Ramen tells you not to be such a pervert, you hormone-controlled youngster. Sorry, thought you meant duh. The second lesson, Ikira cutting him off, probably fearing that if he didn't do this right now he would forget where he was going and he hated being called senile by the kid, tells that you should reconsider that view. Ninja are not renowned for their enormous lifespan, so they should get busy as soon as possible if they want to settle and raise some little ninja of their own. The wielder of the great and all-powerful mace of Ramen winked at him. But she's a Hyuga, I can't just go out with her. Why not? The Hyuga are probably the most powerful, stoic and conservative clan in Konoha. Hinata is the main heir. I'll be like a bum asking for a date with a princess. I'll probably have to beat a small honor guard in the form of her uncle or cousin or something. You're right. You do look like a bum. Yeah, but I could always go change first, before taking care of all that other stuff. Into what? I'll swear you've been wearing that same jumpsuit ever since you grew taller than that barstool you're sitting on. But I change clothes nearly every day. What? You got another 6 of those laying around the house. 36 more likely. Nani? Yeah, there once was this garbage container at the Gap, right? Quote. Dash. That Dobie beat me. How? No, why is this happening? First that stupid little race and now this. What's going on? What's wrong with me? No. What's with this sudden intellectual growth spurt from Naruto? First he gets all quiet and contemplated, now he's suddenly a wise guy. None of this makes sense. And now there's suddenly the Chunin exam. What else can go wrong? Sasuke questioned himself while he was training his kunai throwing. I'll investigate how Naruto got his shit together so fast, but now with the Chunin exam coming up, I really don't have any time to waste focusing on that idiot. I need to pick up on my own training. Goddammit Itachi, if it wasn't for you, I'd have a decent sparring partner right now. Okay, now that he beat Sasuke, he'll probably calm down a little. He proved his point, got to effectively humiliate Sasuke, and he's got the Chunin exam to worry about. Right now, I'm more worried about the way he's using Kage Bunshin. I've heard of a few Junin who used to specialize in fighting with them, but this is getting ridiculous. On a good day I can only make 30 of those. He must have used almost 40 or something in that fight by the rate I saw him going, and he didn't even look slightly tired. I'll think I'll inform Hokage-sama of this later tonight. Right now those two should have a fairly good chance of surviving the exam, so I'll focus a little more on Pinky. Man, she's so much sometimes I just feel like punching her in the face. I swear, sometimes I wish I never took this job. Damn kids drive me crazy. Can't even concentrate anymore. Where was I? Oh yeah, he gently squeezed her firm bosom. And 2 weeks till the Chunin exam. I don't know if I'm ready. Sasuke and now even Naruto look so eager and ready, but I just don't know. I trust Kakashi-sensei if he say we are ready. I believe we are. I just don't know if I am. Well, I've got 2 weeks to prepare and find out, so let's get to it, the pink-haired Kunoichi thought as she started her last lap around training area 58. Sarutobi Sandame didn't just had the most pleasant day. First he received a report from the Anbu of some recent sightings of his former student, now S-class missing Nin, Orochimaru in the Hidden Sand Village, and afterwards he had been negotiating with some diplomats from the recently erected Hidden Sound Village concerning their entrance to the Chunin exams. Right now he was just happy relaxing, smoking a pipe at the floor of the Hokage monument. Life could be grand at times like this, even though something in the back of his head was telling him something wasn't feeling right. Hokage-sama. Sarutobi's head dropped down in disappointment for a fraction of a second. He had been hoping to head over to Konohamaru after this. Training with his grandson always was a joy to him. He had sure grown up a lot after meeting with Naruto. Hey, he have to look up that kid sometime soon as well. It's funny how such thought could occur in such a short time as just nodding your head and turning to say, yes, Kakashi. I'm sorry, but there's something I wish to discuss with you, sir. Is it urgent, dangerous, and/or classified? Kinda. It might be, and not yet, if ever. But mainly it's just interesting or irregular. Believe me, Kakashi, if I knew when Jiraiya is gonna publish his new book I would tell you. Sir, if it was that I would have just answered yes, only for the author, and I hope not. Ha ha ha. Okay then, Kakashi. What can I do for you? Well, Hokage, it's just that I've noticed something peculiar about the way Naruto has been making his Kage Bunshin lately. Oh, and what's that? It appears as if he can make them effortlessly, with any amount of chakra he chooses. Quote. Are you sure of this? No, but I can say that for the last few days he has been using at least 45 clones a day at team trainings or missions alone. Earlier today he used about that number when sparring with his teammate Uchiha Sasuke, and he didn't even look tired afterwards. I even believe he uses them as training dummies for his taijutsu. 45 at once. Once during a beach cleaning mission. Frankly, sir, the kid has a point asking for a more individual wage for the genin on a team. Sarutobi didn't even hear or showed care for the latest part of Kakashi's response. Instead he appeared deep in thought. There could be a number of explanations for this new talent of Naruto that the Junin had just described. The Kyuubi and the seal alone could offer dozens of them. Sarutobi had studied the seal for years, the intricate designs, the never-ending flow of chakra it possessed, and on the other hand contained the complete contract with the kami of death that was hidden underneath, the gateway system that offered the possibility for both chakras to mix yet separating both minds and souls. In the beginning the third used to keep a small red notebook about his discoveries and conclusions about the Shiki Fujin, but by now it had grown out to the size of an entire omnibus. Ever since he had started studying it, he no longer listened to his nickname, the professor, as he felt he himself could have learned a lot from his own student's student. Finally he concluded. Kakashi, for now you are to regard everything you just told me as an S-class secret. Send Naruto to my office first thing in the morning. If he's any later than 8.30, I'll give you a completely new excuse for your lateness. Kakashi nodded, and with a bow he once again disappeared. It didn't take the silver-haired Junin long to find his subordinate. Since he didn't appear to be at his apartment, the Junin just headed for Ichiraku and found Naruto in conversation with the owner. You know, if everything works out between the two of you, I might be able to raise my prices a little, earn enough to expand this place, and then I'll finally be able to bring in some new flavors and get the right spices for everything. That's an interesting point you make, but how would I taste all those delicious new recipes with my head hanging above her dad's fireplace? Well, I get more clients when you're gone anyway, so it's a win-win situation for me either way. I'll get you your fancy clients soon enough. When I win the Chunin exam, I'll show everyone Ichiraku's ramen is the only true breakfast of champions. Ikira held his hand up to his chin and struck a thinking pose and then spoke. Could we get a backup plan, just in case? I would consider that a wise option as well, the Junin spoke as he finally made his presence known. Naruto narrowed his eyes slightly before swallowing his beef ramen and replying. Why, I just beat the village favorite this morning without a single scratch or sweat drop, didn't I? You finally got to beat Sasuke. Why didn't you tell me? Turning back to his friend, Naruto just smiled and said they'll talk later, making an eye motion towards his sensei, paid his bill and walked off with Kakashi. I'm curious about that too, Naruto. Little than a month ago you would have told half the village by now. And who would have cared or believed me if I had? That might be a good point, but I don't buy it. Then how about that it was just a sparring match, so it was no big deal? True as well, but not the real answer again, is it? If you're so smart, then why don't you tell me? I guess I could come up with a few theories, like beating him with an unfair high-level technique like cage bunshin, or cause you tricked him into letting his guard down. Let's get this straight, there was nothing wrong with the way I beat him. He's got eyes that see underneath the underneath without looking, it's not my fault he's too stupid and arrogant to even open them. Well, it couldn't have been a lesson in humility if you're not even humiliating him anywhere. And I really doubt that you're so into teamwork that sudden. Maybe the real question is, why do you care so much about me telling or not? Scared I prove the Uchiha or the Sharingan not to be so all-powerful? Or just angry I beat your little precious pupil and wanna nitpick about it? I care because you are a part of my team. So it's necessary for me as your Junin instructor to get a decent idea of your thinking pattern and your abilities in order for me to make decisions that can mean the difference between life and death. You know my abilities, and as for my thinking pattern, not even I know what I will think of next, and if I did, chances that I'll tell you are at an all-time low. Then how about telling the Hokage? As if you'd send me to the Hokage over nothing but being rude at most. If there was any law against that, the entire Inuzuka clan would have been banned from Konoha centuries ago. Think what you want. You are expected in his office at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, and with that the Junin disappeared once again. Naruto paused a second to take in and consider what just happened, a moment later aloud. Was heard throughout the streets right before Naruto's form was replaced by nothing but smoke and air. The next day, 7:59 a.m., Hokage office. Come in, Hokage Oji-sama. Kakashi said you wanted to see me. Hello Naruto. I assume you know why you are here, the old man asked in his causal tone. Naruto's heartbeat suddenly gained a couple of beats per minute. Oh shit, this could be bad. What should I do now? I didn't do it. Nobody saw me do it. You can't prove a thing. They started it. Wait a second. I actually don't know this time. Not really, sir. Odd then that you had to think about it that long. Anyway, you are here because of a rather interesting report Hatake Kakashi brought me. Oh shit, here it comes. He's booting me of the team. I should have just kicked his everyday without talking all that shit to Kakashi. It appears you have gained quite some talent in the use of Kage Bunshin, I guess so. Here we go. He tells me you easily create up to 40 each day. This is just about my Kage Bunshin. Oh my god. Thank you. I'm gonna kill you, Kakashi. Actually, that's only counting team training and missions. I can easily pull a 40 a minute for a few hours on end. Naruto, 40 a day is a very extraordinary feat already. There's no need to boast, the Hokage smiled. I'm not. Ever since I got some decent chakra control and I could make them on the fly, I've been using them as practice dummies for my taijutsu. This silenced the old man for a few seconds. He now understood what Kakashi meant when he said he could create them effortlessly. Naruto, are you telling me you use a high-class Junin-level ninjutsu for hours on end and for nothing more than a replacement of a practice dummy? Well, yeah, I mean, why not? They're cheaper than wood, you can set them down anywhere easily and they actually give you some reactions or even pointers. Amazing. But, what did you mean when you said you can make them on the fly? I meant since I don't need to use any seals for them anymore. This actually caused the Hokage to raise his eyebrows and choke on his own saliva for a while. He was definitely getting too old for this job. Sorry. That's just very unusual. Would you care to demonstrate that? Sure. Naruto held his hands away from his body, all of his fingers outstretched, and without a word or gesture a clone suddenly appeared at his both sides. Very unusual indeed. Naruto, keep them there for a moment. Pressing a finger on the intercom, he asked his secretary if Hiashi had already arrived. Moments later, a tall, pale man with long dark brown hair, wearing a traditional $20,000 kimono and lacking any emotion on his face, entered the room. Naruto, I'd like you to meet H. Hyuga Hiashi, head of the Hyuga main house, user and protector of the Byakugan and victor in combat over the former Mizukage. Naruto ended with a deep and formal bow. Sarutobi was actually getting a little annoyed. Held only spend about 10 minutes with the kid now, and this was the third surprise already. He hadn't ever seen Naruto show this much etiquette or respect, ever. He had actually expected him to just wave and say, "Hi, pale guy," or something. Konoha's most unpredictable ninja showed true to his title once again. Hiashi, however, acted like the same old stoic he always was. You had sent for me, Hokage-sama. Yes, Hyuga-sama. I'm sure you've heard of Uzumaki Naruto. I'd like you to take a look at him and tell me if there's anything off with his chakra flow. Surely, Hokage-sama, you could have called for any Hyuga to perform such a simple request. Yes, but I needed your absolute discretion and authority on this. If you two are talking about Kyuubi or the seal, by all means do so freely. If there's any chance of something going wrong inside my body, I'd like to know about myself as well. So, he knows now. Yes, he does. Now could you please check him and his clones for any demonic chakra that might have leaked through, besides the normal trickling that should occur every few seconds? Hi, Hokage-sama. While Hiashi checked him and his clones for any irregulations, Naruto suddenly asked the Hokage, normal trickling. Yes, the seal was apparently designed for your and Kyuubi's chakra to mix. I'm not sure why, maybe to prevent a buildup, or to keep your chakra system adapted to the demons in order to build up your resistance. Or maybe the Yondaime messed up. I don't think that's the case, Naruto. It's been that way since you were born and you don't look like you're having any ill effects so far. So have a little faith in our previous village leader. Hokage, there's something here that wasn't included in your description or the previous report my father made 12 years ago. What is it, Hiashi? A buffer of some sort seems to have formed outside the area of the seal. It's like a new, thicker pathway has formed that catches the trickling demon chakra and releases it to the rest of his system in a more steady flow. The amount of demon chakra that's being released, however, is also far greater than the one reported earlier as well. You said you had been training your chakra control, Naruto. Well, everybody told me that was supposed to be a good thing, Naruto half-asked. It's alright. I suspect the increased quantity of Kyuubi chakra is another aspect of the seal. I think it will continue to increase as your own chakra pathways grow stronger and more resistant. This new buffer, however, is something I can't explain. Then again, Hiashi, are there any other unusual chakra pathways in Naruto? After several moments of critical inspection, during which Naruto actually felt pretty much, Hiashi answered there were 3 interloping pathways that seemed a little unstable. These pathways, however, looked slightly weaker than those in the rest of his body. As if they were still developing, like those of a newborn. Naruto, is there anything else you can do on the fly? 2 basic academy jutsus so far. Hiashi, not comprehending exactly what the 2 meant by that, considered it none of his business. This was the Hokage after all. If it was for his ears, he would be told. There is just one more thing. These 2 on the sides are Kage Bunshin, correct? Correct, Hiashi. But they are not regular Kage Bunshin, I presume. How do you know, Hiashi-sama? Their chakra levels are significantly lower. While regular Kage Bunshin would have divided Uzumaki's chakra up evenly amongst the 3, right now these 2 barely register as Genin while his chakra levels are at the average Chunin's right now. Well, they were only for demonstration purposes, the boy apologized. I didn't know what you wanted with them. How do you mean, Naruto? You can determine their strength as well. I never thought about that, really. But I can choose how much chakra to put in the technique and how many clones I want now. Took me quite a while though, but I always thought it was stupid to sacrifice half of my chakra for just a decoy that can only take 1 hit before disappearing. Good, good. Hyuga-sama, you are free to go. My sense rest. Thanks for seeing me on such short notice. Very well, Hokage-sama. Uzumaki. Hiashi gave a short nod to Naruto before being on his way. I think he likes you, the old man smiled when the door closed. You think? A month ago you would have probably cracked a joke about him checking you out or something. Is Ikira actually right about you and Hinata? What is he? It's none of your business, old man. He. You're right. I just wanted to see your reaction. Now, about your newly discovered talent. What we know so far is you've developed 4 new chakra pathways, one acting as a buffer for Kyuubi's excess chakra that's being mixed with your own. Then there are the 3 jutsus you're able to perform without any seals. I'm pretty sure you've put 2 and 2 together yourself already. I might. Demo, isn't it impossible to grow new chakra pathways after birth? Well informed, Naruto. Yes, it is. Just like it's supposed to be impossible to perform Kage Bunshin without seals, or choosing how much chakra to put into that technique. What about Henjar Kawarimi? Same thing. All 3 are supposed to be one-hand seal techniques. And yet here you are, pulling of both feats that are deemed impossible in the ninja world. You think it can have anything to do with the Kyuubi? Possible. However, the seal seems to be working like it should. So his influence should be minimal. It could be that the continuous mixing of your chakras has affected the working of your inner coil system somehow, but if that were the case, I think there should have been some more drastic changes by now. No, I think we can ignore the Kyuubi factor for the most part. So that leaves us with only one option, doesn't it? Quote. You think I have a bloodline? I think you might have one. However, it's too soon to tell really. There's also the problem that I've never heard of a clan with such a flexible chakra system, or one that didn't need to use seals. Right now it's all just speculation, but I'll be sure to look into it. The old man lurked at his pipe another time. Naruto didn't notice the slight shaking of his hands since he was too busy thinking about the new possibilities that were now opening up to him. Naruto, have you told anyone of these new abilities? No, I never thought it was anything special. I've seen plenty of people using jutsus without hand seals before. So I just figured everybody with the proper control could pull it off. Good. I suggest you to keep it that way. There's no telling what certain people would do to gain those abilities. Hi, Hokage Oji-sama. After Naruto had left his office, the Leaf Cage immediately started writing a letter to one of his former students. Possible Okuji Su-ken discovered. The Hokage figured there wouldn't be any other words necessary. If this didn't bring the toad pervert back to Konoha, nothing would. Kind of an anti-climax right now Anyway, I didn't really want to give Naruto a bloodline, but his use of Kage Bunshin in the anime just never made any real sense to me when compared to that of high-level shinobi like Sarutobi, Jiraiya of Kakashi. So I needed an explanation for that besides his freakish stamina or chakra levels. Anyway, hope you liked the chapter. Next